Hello, boys and girls. Welcome back to Out of This World. I'm Jamie Hanshaw, and I'm here with Paul, and we are going to be doing some more Disney deep dives. I think it's time for any of you people who want to learn more about Disney and psychology. I thought better call Paul. Every time I want to do a Disney show, I better call Paul. So tonight we're gonna do Fantasia, which is a classic. We're gonna do Gnome Mobile, which is a lost, weird, what would
Obscure, obscure.
obscure, yes, obscure.
Though it,
Um,
though it was one of the last ones Walt worked on before he died,
oh
so it's got
really?
a little magic in it.
Okay.
We'll see
Um,
about
well, they all have magic in them, right?
that. That's true. That's part of what we're getting on about.
Yes. So Fantasia, No Mobile, Elemental, and Escape from Witch Mountain, which is also kind of a bizarre lost one that not everyone talks about, but it does have a trilogy and a TV show and a reboot with The Rock.
Yeah, hunk of rock did
So,
it.
so let's start out with Fantasia because this is one that the Illuminati programmers like to use. And I have this whole section from Fritz Springmeier's book, and it's called How to Brainwash Your Friends and Family. And it says you will need a copy of Fantasia in this article. And so what they did was go through Fantasia and they pointed out what the programmer might say to a child under hypnosis or drugs, going along with the script in
Wow.
Fantasia to get them to create altars and internal worlds and fantasy lands and all different stuff like that.
So what year did that come out, Jimmy? That
The
report?
the Springmeier books in the late 90s, so they were so hard to get. Okay, they used to be self-bound in these like yellow spiral like this thick, so those things can go for hundreds of dollars now. I don't have those anymore, but I do have like the reprints that are this thick and they don't have as much in them, but I did print this out a long time ago
Yeah,
from.
so that was written in the 90s then, how
Yeah,
to the brainwashing procedure, or was it written
yeah.
early?
No, this was in the 90s.
Gotcha.
So he says the prerequisite is to read the part in his book called Disney's Satanic Bloodline, which I have read, and I did a lot of digging from that to put in my first book when I was talking about the history of Walt Disney the man. So we talked about that, I think, way back in the
Yeah.
beginning when you first came on with me. I kind of was showing you some things from that. But this thing says during the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, at least 90% of the Illuminati's trauma based mind control slaves were subjected to watching Disney's Fantasia film in order for them to build the foundational imagery of mind control. So this is Clockwork Orange, like straight out of Clockwork Orange, you know, where they tape his eyeballs open and they squirt them.
That's kind of a motif we'll have in this episode because I also noticed that jumping ahead to Gnome Mobile,
Uh-huh.
there's kind of a plot like that when he starts watching the video of the redwood trees being knocked down. The
Yeah.
grandpa knows he's like freaking out because yeah, at first he's a bit relaxing by the imagery, and then suddenly as they get chopped down and they're yelling timber, it like triggers him, remember? And he's like
Oh, good
screaming.
point. It does. He has a melty because he can't handle the trees getting cut down.
Yeah,
So it says
timber.
child mind control victims had their eyes taped open and sat one on one with their primary programmers so that they could give them the scripts as the child watched Disney's Fantasia over and over. What made this movie unique as a programming tool is that it had almost everything the programmers needed to create a foundational imagery for their trauma based mind control. To build a dependable altar system means that the worlds need a solid foundation. So if you ever read these Springmeier books, they are so technical. Like you won't even understand a percentage of what they're even talking about. It's that crazy. Um, but so I sat down with Fantasia and I sat down with this thing minute by minute. I mean, it gives you like at 30 seconds, at 1.5, at 2 minutes, and it
Oh,
uh
nice. Yeah. Let's
yeah.
go through as much of it you want to do because it's fresh in my mind.
Okay,
And
good.
before we get started, I guess it's kind of the one thing I've been talking about our last two shows too, but my sort of angle with Disney there's a lot of them we could talk about, but I'm interested of it, sort of it being, I think, a good example of Gnosticism and sort of like alchemical themes, and whether you want to tie that into how organizations and people use these spiritual occult practices towards, mind control or whatever, that's fine too. Also, at the deeper, not deeper, but this another level too, there's just the fact that it's happening. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know as much as you do about like the mind control stuff. For me, it's more of like seeing the patterns of the sort of what I think is basically a lot of Gnostic threads going on there
Oh,
that have a lot
definitely.
and sort of by then going one step further and saying that I think Gnosticism itself arose in the late 19th century, basically, as we started using electricity
Mm-hmm.
as a the new mythology that came through the use of electricity has thoroughly Gnostic tendencies in it, and that's really demonstrable throughout many things throughout the 20th century. So Disney,
Illumination,
yeah,
right?
instant illumination, yeah. So Disney to me, being an artist, is sort of an antenna reaching into the ether, the electric area,
Mm-hmm.
because so much of, well, whatever, we could talk about that the next show.
Okay.
But so much of the sort of Disney's basically picking up on a lot of these Gnostic threads and alchemical ideas, I think, long before a lot of other people were. And
Right.
so that's kind of something we've talked about in the past too. Just to remind our viewers, that's the only sort of the only thing I have coming at this is that I see a lot of
Well,
alchemical Gnostic stuff in the Disney.
that's perfect because we just talked about Barbie and how Barbie is Gnostic, if you can
I've had
imagine
so many
that.
movies to watch over the last few days. I think I'll watch Barbie this week, and then next time we talk, I'll
Okay.
have also in my holster.
So this is so crazy for people to wrap their minds around that this whole Disney conglomerate can be this gigantic mind control sorcerer arm, right? And I just took a couple notes when I was skimming over again of Disney's Satanic Bloodline, and this popped out to me. So Wall himself had a full-time image builder named Joe Reddy, who was also Shirley Temple's publicity agent. So these people, um, almost anybody you see through the camera is presenting some kind of facade, right? It's all about illusions, it's about glamour, it's about the fantasy, the phantasmagoria, they used to call it, or Fantasia, right? And the conductor that comes out, so according to this programming script, he's supposed to represent Dr. Mengele, who was the infamous Yahtzee doctor in World War II, who kind of kicked off this whole making trauma-based mind control into a system that can ease like a formula, basically, right?
Hmm.
And so it starts out with the conductor, and he is the programmer, he's the Dr. Mengele archetype. And the first song is Toccata and Fugue by Bach, which is kind of like Dracula's theme. I always thought of it as
So,
like,
so before we even jump into the Bach, I thought the conductor was like, I brought up my sort of preamble with the alchemy thing really quick because I didn't want to be so out of left field, because I think the conductor sort of really symbolizes that sort of the sorcerer,
mm-hmm,
through moving his hands.
yes,
Matter itself is being transmorphed in a way into sound, pushed so tightly to create sound waves and then create music. And he's like sitting here being super highlighted, because you have to think too about like the conductor. He's a very visual role. He's
mm-hmm,
somebody you sit there and you look at and he's doing the hand motions. Like he's not really necessary if you only listen to music.
mm-hmm,
Like I have a musical training. That's what I went to school for. So I mean, conductors are totally necessary, but on some level they're not. And so
right.
like the conductor being introduced into the visual medium, I just thought was like, for lack of like a 5 minute riff, very interesting, let's say, and sort of a sort of very interesting icon to put at the very beginning of our presentation of all
Yeah.
this too. He's the
It's
alchemist, you know?
he's the alchemist, he's the magus, he's the puppeteer, he's the conductor that pulls, the strings, and you put it very succinctly, he makes matter out of thin air.
which will tie in later with Witch Mountain because we also got some conducting with magic and music going
Yes.
on in that too.
I wrote that down. I wrote cymatics down. I'm like, that's what they're doing.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So the first song is like that way, right?
Oh yeah.
And that's like the classic Dracula. I don't know why I put those two together. It must have come from somewhere. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I could totally see it in my head, no problem. But I
Yeah.
mean, if look, if we're gonna go, I'll the way I could get on it would be like really, really, really big picture. When we think about movies, Hollywood in general being this influential medium to conjure images and feelings in our mind, then one way or another, Hollywood has induced that association.
Hmm.
And to me, Disney is a very good sort of face of the entire Hollywood Promethean Luciferic mythos, you know. So saying, yeah, we can make the connection between Dracula and Bach and
Yeah.
it not be too far is what I'm trying to say. Is
It's
like
just
something
a weird choice for their very first theme. But
like
anyways,
nobody in the 17th century when that no when that was coming out in the 18th century, nobody would have associated the two. It wasn't until somehow or another classical music with the organ got started associated with
yes, the big pipe organ. Do 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 do
yeah,
do.
Phantom of the Opera, that kind of deal. Like, so it
Right.
wasn't until we were able to see these in our time period did these associations even become possible, you know? So,
Watching this movie, I was amazed how what a perfect marriage animation and classical music is.
so that's another thing I wrote, just really quick to some notes I had was like, it really is kind of monumental, the meeting of classical music and animation. And I didn't bring my Gabler book out, the Neil Gabler book out with me, but I had there's a long bit in there where he talks about Stokowski and Walt sort of like is one of the first interactions that Walt was really like, really jazzed about and felt like he had an equal collaborative partner. And is a very much like, again, this funny, like, alchemy thing where like you have the very highbrow classical society with the lowbrow cartoonist Walt,
Yeah.
who wasn't really seen as Hollywood elite, at least not publicly.
Hmm.
And so one of the things I was going to say on that is that like what's really profound is that through the history of classical music, like basically classical music has always been like originally there was no classical music that you went to a theater and witnessed. Music was just participatory.
Hmm.
And then basically jumping way ahead in the history of it, it becomes a part of the church. And
Mm.
then it's not until like people could argue medieval, Renaissance, really by the Renaissance that like sacred music and secular music begin to split. And then when they split, that secular music basically becomes high art classical by like the 18th, 19th century. Because in Mozart's time, when Mozart was playing, people were like basically at the bars listening to music. And
Hmm.
then when Beethoven came around, who was again the conductor, he was like one of the first conductor figures, you could say, iconically. And then we move in later with Brahms and others down the way. By the time we get to Liszt, we have like rock star status. But what I'm trying to say is like classical music was always first one of those things that was just a part of church music in life. And then it got separated, became its own thing. And then it became high culture to the point where opera was considered like the highest point of Western art because
Hmm.
you have the fusion of drama, music, architecture, and things like staging and lighting and all these things that would precede Hollywood and cinema. So then for it to like Western culture to kind of reach its high point of cultural potential and then mix it with this super lowbrow thing of animation. Especially remember when people thought like animation didn't need sounds. Like why would these cartoons make noises? So
Mm-hmm.
it says like it really was a meeting of high and low that like when you look at history, at least Western history from a big grand perspective, Fantasia is kind of a pretty surreal piece of history.
Well, speaking of lowbrow and highbrow, I'm thinking of like Looney Tunes too, because a lot of people are just introduced to these amazing composers through Lo Looney Tunes and cartoons. So
Yeah, I surely was.
yeah. Okay, so all the musicians are shadows, like many of the altars become, it says in this script. So the conductor is there. The beginning is like building worlds for these shadow people, these altars, these splits, they call them. And then we move on to Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker. And they make note that there is a lot of spinning in this piece, hypnotic spinning. And so I guess part of the programming is when they are switching altars, it feels like they're spinning, like their
Hmm.
head is spinning, like on a carousel, or um, when you spin around in a chair, you get that lightheaded feeling, or like a butterfly lifting off. They also report that it feels like. So, what did you think about the Nutcracker one?
Oh, I think I'm jumping ahead to one of the movies we'll do later on, but there's I was thinking about butterflies in the animation. Forgive me, I kind of zoned out. I was thinking about all the times where butterflies are sort of in
Oh,
the
that's
show there.
okay. There's butterflies
Or
coming up in the Sorcerer's Apprentice one. But
okay,
this
that's
one
yeah.
is
I knew
about,
there was one.
yeah, this one's about fairies. So they're telling you like things about the fairies. They say fairies can create anything, so can you. So the words of the programmer are in bold, and then it describes like what the scene is. And so one of the
Mm.
like programming code says the fairies can do anything, and so can you. The fairies give stars, and they talk about how you are a star, and this goes along with the Thelema.
Oh, right, because this is the paper that you as a parent are reading to your child, right? While you're
Well,
watching
this is what the
Fantasia.
programmer is saying.
Right.
Yeah,
So the parent will put in Uncle Lucas,
Uncle
like, and
Walt. Yeah, the programmer.
yeah. Okay. Like saying that would be a script that I would be saying to my child, right? Like,
Hmm.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're
Because I'm
saying,
wondering, what does that language mean? What are they saying? You will be the fairy, but that's like something that I should be saying to my child as I'm watching this,
yeah.
so to speak. That's wild.
Isn't that crazy?
Is that what is right? Am I right about that?
Hmm.
That's like this? Okay.
So yeah, this is the programming script.
All right, let's go on. Tell me more.
And so he's saying, you are a star, you are a fairy, follow the yellow brick road. Um, so Fremar is saying the fairies are the creative splits of altars. So these are the parts of their personality that are good at singing, dancing, performing, painting, the artistic expressions of them
Yeah,
are.
that's obvious. The fairy's like high, it's not grounded and lowly like a gnome or like a
Mhm.
little dwarf. It's high and airy, and so it kind of reaches into that more the place of the ideals, the elements, as we
Yeah,
will talk about later. But yeah, I could see it being like a
yeah.
creative.
So that one is about the fairies. And then we get to the Sorcerer's Apprentice vignette. And he starts off by saying this is a 2,000-year-old story.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay.
And
Did you know? Go ahead.
no, I was like, what kind of story is that? Because I looked it up. And so this little cartoon is based on a symphonic poem from 1897, which
Yeah, Paul
is
Dukas.
based on another poem from 1797. Johann von Goethe's poem, The Sorcerer's Apprentice, first came out in 1797.
Oh, Goethe did Faust too.
Uh-huh.
He was the one that wrote Faust. See, I thought maybe they were playing saying that this story being 2,000 years old is like a Faustian story that's like super old and
Yeah.
piece back out. You found it going back no further than Goethe or
Yeah. So that poem was 1797. And then Paul Dukas made a symphonic poem about Sorcerer's Apprentice in 1897. And then in 1940, we get Mickey Mouse's The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
so it's not really it doesn't have an older very old history.
Well, I not that they say because I'm wondering what is he talking about? Almost 2,000 years.
I I thought the story had I mean it was dare I call it archetypal, there was a lot in there that
Hmm.
I want you want to say, but this was kind of like the one bit of all of them where I kind of was like, "Oh, I got a hot take on this one that I should talk about." But anyways, go on.
Um, what's your hot take?
Well,
Well,
okay, a hot take, but like my interpretation of it was that
yeah.
like basically I found it, despite me trying to look at more of the occult, obvious Sorcerer's Apprentice thing, I was kind of blown away how simple of a tale it was to sort of be a metaphor of a lot of what I've been talking about with technology, and how when we create these extensions of ourselves, we end up creating services and disservices and whole new environments entirely that then we end up, as we try to make our machines work for us, Mickey and the brooms, we end up having to work for the machines, Mickey trying
Mm.
to clean the rooms and get the whole situation settled.
Hmm.
So basically, like literally, and it's because Mickey wears the magic hat. See, the hat's the extension of himself. And again, you can like go into a whole symbolism of the pointy hat and having the stars on it and all these things that like obviously is hearkening to. But
Hmm.
you notice the sorcerer too begins his thing at the skull candle. It's like this
Yes.
candle.
And what comes out of it? Did you notice?
First there was, yeah, there's a butterfly. Oh, smoke, there's
Exactly.
Batman. I was joking. First there's
Yeah.
Batman.
Yeah.
There's like this bag bat. So I was like, oh, it's the Batman. And then there's the psychedelic 60s butterfly. That's what I
Yeah.
wrote.
So according to this script, the wizard represents the programmer.
See the programmer, exactly. That's what I was
Yeah.
go on. Yeah, because there's more I want to riff on with the technology bit about the story. But
Okay.
let's go
Yeah,
on.
programming computers and all that. Okay, so the wizard is the programmer, and he's conjuring up this incense and smoke, and first it's a scary looking bat, right? But then it turns into a beautiful butterfly, and you've seen this alchemical transformation.
So this one was so on the nose, totally. This one, especially from the bat to the butterfly, they kind of like are similar but not sort of
Yeah.
things. But
Yeah.
I read this one like so literally that it's like it's such a funny, I don't know, it's kind of a unique and not unique, like special, just like okay, eye roll interpretation. But
Uh-huh.
first this comes out in what, 1939,
1940 it says.
40.
Yeah.
Okay, and Batman debuts as like 1937, 38 or something.
Uh-huh.
So you have this whole like Batman is kind of anti-hero that will become big and popular over the next like 75 years, let's say. And then
Mm.
you have Psychedelic 60s Butterfly, which is also coming out. And I thought that to be these kind of funny, like again, there's no real connection in the movies. I was just like doing my own Rorschach test, but I was like, oh, they prophesized Batman and the 60s revolution with this Fantasia.
Yeah.
The programmer knows, you know,
Yes.
with the Marvel comics and the psychedelia.
Oh, totally. It was a psychedelic
You know, I know
butterfly, wasn't it?
Batman's not Marvel, but you know what I'm saying, the
Yeah.
whole like, superhero explosion of the last century.
Hmm. Yeah, the butterfly, it didn't look like a normal animal. It was a psychedelic light, like radiating butterfly. So Mickey sees the wizard do this and he wants the powers for himself. Um, so that's when he takes the hat and he puts it on. He's able to control the elements, the broom and the water. And when he
Yep.
fall, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so before he goes to sleep, because I got one thing to say before that. I just basically the same thing you're saying with the programmer. Mickey is what I call the media technology. He's the
Mm,
media manager. So
mm,
now he literally has the broom as the extension of the whole body. You know, the stuff where he's pushing and cleaning things away. He's now extended himself through his technology, and basically he's multiplying now his identity, which he will throughout the episode, just like how we have multiple identities in our different apps online, you know, and we all have, or this multiple identity issue going on in the modern world. All
hmm.
this has because Mickey's multiplying himself through extending himself through multiplication through the brooms, which he'll need to manage more and more and more. But
Exactly.
he gets tired of it. It's exhausting, so he goes to bed, and then what happens? Because he goes into his shaman trance
Yes.
and astral projects to
He
his
astral
all
projects.
light
Exactly.
world. Yeah, anyways, to his own little sea. He goes from being the sorry, I got one last thing to say. He's becoming the media manager,
Uh-huh.
managing all his media around him, getting tired of it. So then when he sort of can't handle it and he passes out and like does his drugs and goes into shaman zone, he then becomes the master of his own little personal Mickey Matrix, you know, and
Hmm.
he's able to like do all this stuff. So here's that sort of alchemical again. It's like I'm being very broad picture by saying things are Gnostic alchemical because it's basically this constant light and dark. The light and the dark are in this, you know, harmony and this balance and this dance to find union, cosmic yin yang stuff. So that's like what's going on with Mickey and his inability to handle himself through his multiple social media personalities that he has and all his brooms. And then
Yeah,
he goes into this narcissist narcosis where he like can't handle it, passes out, and he goes into spiritual world and sees himself as like, this amazing TikTok star, Instagram, whatever,
good
So
point.
yeah,
Can
yeah.
be
So that's
anything
that's my,
online.
that's my hot take on
Yeah,
Mickey the Media
because
Matrix.
he literally falls asleep and astral projects out, and then he controls the stars, the cosmos, like he has been controlling down, as above, so below. Um,
Right. And see, when you're at light speed, I thought this was so crazy, this like relevancy, like you're saying, is the sorcerer being the programmer. It's also showing how the alchemist himself or the sorcerer's apprentice
mhm,
doesn't know what he's doing with the alchemist's tools. That's
mhm,
the whole like sort of moral of the story, you could say. And so like Mickey definitely symbolizes when he goes into light world, sort of the way that in our narcissism, the way that, because narcissist thought he saw somebody else in the reflection.
mm,
That's why he was so blown away by it. He when he's looking at himself through a different medium, he was unable to see who he really was, and he fell in love with the projected image of himself. And what I'm trying to say is like the extension of himself numbs him to his real condition. And
yes.
same with Mickey, and by going into light space and being able to do whatever he wants, he's able to basically make his own personality, which is like, talking modern trends here in so many words,
Mhm.
of creating our identities and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that comes from inability to manage all the brooms and going into shaman trance because of it.
And you can see how poignant this imagery would be to a little kid trying to make sense of what's happening.
Dude, especially if like you're in a broken home and it's tough with your parents and they're just like tired and you're picky eater and it's just like just give them iPad for the night, and
Mm,
you just like go into your little iPad haven. Yeah, I feel so
mhm.
bad for the kids of today,
I do
honestly.
too. Yeah, so the when he comes back to consciousness and he goes and kills the broom, all the splintered pieces come alive, right? And so this
Yeah.
is the mind fracturing into its alters or splits and then becoming little soldiers.
What causes in those situations the mind to split? Is there like a trigger thing, or
It's
do they just
a it's an
happen naturally over time, or
it's a natural defense mechanism that we all have to shield our brain from traumatic memories so that we don't relive them. Like when you get in a car accident and you come to and you're like, I don't remember anything that happened. I don't remember my bones crunching or the nothing. Like it's just
right?
amnesia. They're amnesic barriers that they're trying to create artificially in your brain.
It's like Mickey when he wakes up from his drug trance, he knows he's in trouble and he has to smash his you know the
Yeah.
thing that got him. It's like typical Adam and Eve, right? Like, oh, I didn't do it, just blame the broom. But
Yeah. So, like you said before, he can't control all of these like the programmer, the alchemist, or the magus can because he's just a neophyte
well,
still.
it's weird. I would say without getting like, of course, going full orthodox interpretation, I gotta give this one a no for all the alchemy, dark wizardry stuff. But if I'm gonna try to give it a loving look at it with love, I'd say in a sort of pre-incarnational world,
Hmm.
the
Okay.
sorcerer in this is a good guy because the sorcerer doesn't need, maybe not good, but just going to show, like he's saying, he's not the neophyte. He's actually the master with a capital M
Hmm.
because he doesn't need the hat to control the waves. I'm jumping ahead a little bit because I wanted to talk about something in there earlier. But when we get to it, saying the master himself, he just uses the actual power that he's incorporated into his body. See,
Oh,
he's an incarnated sorcerer, where Mickey needs the hat. He needs his cell phone to be who he is.
yeah.
He,
That's a
he
good
can't live
point.
without he can't be the sorcerer without the extended identity, the hat, you know,
Right. That's
or the
really
sorcerer yeah, anyways, you get my point. The one thing I would say, forgive me, I know I'm taking kind of taking and running right now.
That's okay.
But when Mickey's caught in the vortex, it was just
Uh-huh.
one of these funny things that, like, if anybody is interested in media ecology, Marshall McLuhan, kind of stuff, one of the sort of major metaphors is used is a story by Edgar Allan Poe about a mariner
Mm-hmm.
who, like, he goes to the sea and his ship sinks, and as it gets caught in the vortex and he's going down, he begins to do pattern recognition and see that certain things come out of the vortex that he's able to catch on and able to save himself by grabbing on the things that are coming out from what's going under. And so it's a way of sort of looking at environments and being able to pick up on patterns and
Uh-huh.
to look at things that are being retrieved from the depths as the situation changes. So I thought it was very funny because in this, Mickey is literally caught in the vortex, and what he grabs onto in this digital world that's lost all sense of, for lack of a better word, like normalcy, he grabs onto the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he retrieves knowledge, like, in a way that you could say for this movie in context would be true knowledge, like the same thing that the sorcerer learned from. But I thought it's funny because Mickey's still unable to read the book to save the day. He just literally grabs onto it like as a item out of the vortex to rescue himself from. So it's a
Yeah,
very ambiguous, like, what is the fate of the literate man in the West? Is he just going to grab on the book and buy cool books at Barnes and Noble to put on his shelf because they look cool, or is he actually going to open the book as it's coming out of the vortex and learn to be able to do the spells?
right. So the magician doesn't need the book or the hat, right? But Mickey clings on to those things like because
Right.
he hasn't reached that level yet. So here in the script they're talking about the vortex of dissociation. Um, and when the brooms splinter, they say, it's okay to splinter. You are tired. You can escape that by resting and let a part of yourself come out.
Hmm.
Says after the splitting trauma, the programmer needs to be able to see what the child has created. So he wants the child to look at what's been made. Can you look at what you created? The programmer says. However, the part of the child that looks back at the trauma will then see the disassociated trauma was real, and that will make the child angry. The programmers want the child to disassociate what he built, and when the child looks back at what he has created, he goes into a vortex of disassociation.
Mm.
The child is told if he ever looks back at the memory, he will go into the vortex.
Mm.
So, different ways of getting people to block memories, and even if they do recall things, I mean, it is so technical. I encourage everyone to at least get the new updated version and just see what's going on because you could do an entire like class on just how this happens.
Especially when we get to the pagan goddess bathing scene. I'm sure that one will have some.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Uh...
So Mickey uses the book as a lifeboat, right, and gets rolled into the vortex. It says a
Yeah,
vortex.
because forgive me, he surfs the waves, man. It's like a total internet thing.
Oh,
Mickey,
yeah.
programmer, or talking early internet, we were always talking about surfing the web, right? Like, nobody
Yeah.
uses that expression anymore. It has something to do with the times and when it first came out and what the internet was. But I thought it's funny that, again, in this sort of foreshadowing way of Disney being the antenna, 20th century, predicting a lot of this, predicting maybe a strong word, but picking up on a lot of that stuff. I just
Yeah.
thought it was funny that he was surfing the web on
Mm-hmm.
his book, on his little big, iPad book, basically. But anyways.
It says a vortex is often created from that part of the mind that is holding the high energy that accumulates in the mind just before the mind splits. So crazy stuff. Um,
Yeah, because sorry, I finished. I have my thought finished. As Mickey's surfing the waves, the
mhm.
internet frees the academic, right? In many
Mm.
ways, whether it's like a Jordan Peterson, who's like the spotlight academic now as celebrity, or even frankly, like what Jada is teaching and what you do, and like anybody that's doing high knowledge academy type thinking and dialogue and teaching on the internet that's become a thing. Like
Hmm.
or going to Oxford classes online. So again, like in this way that Mickey's the book, the academic, the literati
Hmm.
is surfing the web, and I just thought this movie is very prophetic of
Yeah,
that. All right, forgive me.
that's
It
okay.
was a great scene. It was a great
There,
classic bit of animation.
there's a lot
Come back.
in
Sorry.
just that little vignette. There's a lot of occult stuff, and it's pretty much the basis of the entire Disney. I don't know what the word I'm searching for,
We could
but
call it
Mickey is the Sorcerer's Apprentice.
yeah, we could call it like Disney's like like in The Simpsons how Homer works at the power plant. Like Fantasia, Sorcerer's Apprentice is like the power plant of Disney magic. It's
Yeah,
like where all of the there's so much imagery and evocation that comes from Mickey with that outfit on.
and it also has a very Wizard of Oz type feel to it because he's the front man that's working for the person behind the curtain, right? He's
Mm.
the apprentice that is bringing forth the magic in the name of the sorcerer, right? Who's working in the shadows. So yes, that was Sorcerer's Apprentice. Was there anything else you wanted to say about that? There's
No, we're good. Just I guess at the very end, I thought as sort of poetic justice that the broom for its purpose of cleaning and sweeping things up was used ultimately to sweep out Mickey from so the tool finally ultimately turns against its technician
oh
and it's
yeah,
used basically to make the user becomes the content just like
yes.
we become content of our own technologies these days.
And we're slaves to the machines that we built.
Yeah. Or this, another way of saying is we're the sex organs of our machines.
Oh
We
yeah.
make we make them, they do their thing, and then they require us to keep making them better, you know?
Mm, good point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all I got on Sorcerer's Apprentice. It was
Okay.
a classic.
Um, okay, so then next is Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, which is an occult classic, right?
Evolutionism propaganda at its finest, to be technical, like propaganda just meaning art with a message. I was like, whoa, this is really just like yeah, now that I mean it really hit home to me. I didn't have much to say on this one other than just like the initial comment of like it really hit home to me how stupid the kind of evolutionism story is
Yeah,
that we somehow from like volcanoes to like chicken egg dinosaurs to people. Like
yeah.
how are you really with like so many gaps in between and cosmic like whodunits in between all these situations
Missing
that like
links.
right. And
Yeah.
suddenly we're just supposed to think that like no, dude, like God is real and church is cool. You better believe in it because we all come from cosmic dust. It's like, I don't know about that one. That sounds pretty, yeah. So it's just funny seeing like how much time and energy and stuff went into making something like this was just astounding. So I was just like, whoa, like
Right.
what a
So,
what a stylistic bit of art. Anyways,
yeah.
that's all I got on this one, really. So what do you
Well,
got for this?
Igor Stravinsky was friends with mystic Nicholas Roerich. Have you ever heard of that guy?
Not Rorik, no.
Okay, so he's another theosophy mystic, New Age before it was called that. He was friends with the Vice President Henry Wallace. Nicholas Roerich was. Okay, so we got Igor Stravinsky, the Rite of Spring, who is the composer of this piece, friends with
Hmm.
Nicholas Roerich. Nicholas Roerich is the person who gave us the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill
Mm.
in like 1913 or some 30s or 13. I can't remember.
Wow, that big, huh? 20th century.
Yeah. So it wasn't always on there. It was Nicholas Roerich who went to Tibet and all these weird mystic places to Ball and Himalayas and all that, and went into the caves and found these gods and stuff. And he came out with this box that he never let go of. Nobody knows what's inside of it. If you're interested in Roerich, there's a Nicholas Roerich Museum in New York City. I don't know if it's still there, but I went there in Manhattan. And so this is how we're getting symbols on our money is these mystical people like he's almost kind of like an American Rasputin, if you want to put it like that,
Ooh.
right?
What's Rorax Sputin?
Rasputin. He wasn't American, but he is the one who convinced the vice president to put that pyramid on the dollar bill. So he was friends with Stravinsky, who wrote this Rite of Spring. The working title was called The Great Sacrifice.
Yeah, and Rite of Spring was a serious scandal when it was debuted.
Yeah.
Because like in classical music, you could say nothing had ever been heard like that before,
Uh-huh.
and it literally caused riots. I think in Paris when it debuted in 1913, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yeah, it's pretty wild. Like he had to kind of like sneak out the back door for his life. So saying that there's something deeply this music just has to, like you could almost say like a living aura around it of dynamic explosive energy into the culture.
Well, what it's about is um a pagan ritual where the elders are like seated in a circle and then they are watching a young girl dance herself to death to propitiate the god of spring.
That's like midsummer.
Kinda, yeah. It was called the Great Sacrifice. That was the
Well, don't
working
they do
title.
that whole like dancing around the maypole thing too
Hmm.
till the I don't know if one of the ladies dies because of it. But anyways,
Yeah. So Fantasia's Rite of Spring is the story of creation according to evolution, right? It's their evolutionary cosmology, and it's so stupid. It's like you said, it's like a lonely planet, um, out there in the sea of nothingness, and then you have lava, and then you have oceans, and the lava and oceans become amoebas, and the amoebas eat each other, and they like start dividing like cells and creating life.
it's weird because I confess before I mean I don't know. Frankly, I've had my metaphysics changed so many times before converting to Christianity that like saying I kind of like did my time supermarketing, you know. And the one thing I can see why people like about evolution is because like if you actually have a conscience and you're the image of God, you're not like straying too far from it deep in your heart, despite as pagan and atheistic as you might be. There's something kind of cool of thinking like, well, let's say like, dude, that people even can create audio animatronics and make a Disneyland when we've just come from amoeba. Like, aren't human
Oh,
beings smart and artistic and you know, but it's again, it's like deep down, if you pursue that sort of philosophy, the evolution one, when you pursue it, ultimately you get to like transhuman AI robot takeover. But
yeah.
somewhere in the middle, you get to this sense that like the man, the artist, like the Prometheus, Lucifer, who's so incredible that he's risen out of the darkness. Like, see, what I'm trying to say is evolution is also basically like Gnostic myth, where you're the
Yeah.
light in the world of darkness, and you're gonna like, you know, find integration and blah blah. I'm getting tired of even talking about it. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That
Yeah.
myth. It's like, yeah, do it yourself transcendence
Yes, like
from
look
the
how far we've come just by evolving
right. The
how we
narcissism.
knew how to do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, go on, go on.
So, yeah, you got the ocean bugs, and then somehow these become fish, and somehow these become dinosaurs. And here's where the programmer tells the child that the dinosaurs are demons. And this scene is very Land Before Time. I mean, straight out of a lot of scenes in Land Before Time, I feel like they plucked them right out of.
Do you know, this is where I'm really going to show my true academic stupidity. Did they figure out the idea of meteors? Well, I guess I don't even know if it's all theory, but the whole meteor versus the flood, like, have they figured this out since Fantasia came out? Because then you say when they were making this movie, we don't know how the dinosaurs died, they just did.
Oh, uh-huh.
Like,
I
and
don't
have they
know.
since figured out, quote unquote, figured out it's a meteor, or is that still up in the air? I don't think it frankly matters,
They just
but I
talk
was
out
just
their butts sometimes.
I'm
I don't even know what they're
curious.
saying.
I don't know. I don't even. I just figure out whatever the fathers say about dinosaurs. Like, if dinosaurs, knowing about dinosaurs is necessary for my salvation, I'd like to know about it. But if not, I can't be bothered.
Yeah. Well, we did a whole show on dinosaurs if they're real or sus, and I'm coming up with I don't think all of
Like
those.
the only answer I could give that I think is patristic enough that
Uh-huh.
I feel like I'm also just doing the Paul thing here is like I think probably before the flood, it'd be possible that maybe there were dinosaurs. If you get in all this Nephilim stuff and by extension, blah, 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 blah. I'm sure people can make a case for it pre-flood.
Mm-hmm.
After the flood, where basically all of human history and records begin existing from,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have any evidence of dinosaurs. And if you actually look at like how they do carbon dating, there's good chance it's something that like I saw this piece like basically this volcano that basically made a lava rock, birthed a lava rock like 2 weeks earlier. They got it tested, and the people in the lab said it's like 2 million years old. And it literally was a fresh bit of like baby lava rock. So
Yeah.
saying my long way of saying that dinosaurs may be pre-flood, but otherwise don't really care. Moving on from
I'm trying
dinosaurs.
to, oh, here. I found these pictures from a book that was talking about taking evolution like further, like what will creatures look like in the future?
Oh yeah.
And it's the goofiest things. Look at that.
They
So
look
that's,
like they look like from a Tolkien
yeah,
illustration.
that's one of the things they posited that we're headed towards. What else? Oh, here's something. In 1,000 years, we may look like this. Like, what?
I like that. I don't know whether it's a clothing he's wearing or a true lion's mane that's
It
growing
is
out of
freaking goofy. Okay, look at this guy. Here's another 1,000 years. We'll probably look.
What? Ew.
Can you believe that?
Ew. It looks like a comic book villain. Oh, that's gross. That's
I know.
creepy.
So we're just gonna be like blob monsters.
Need
It's
some eye bleach after that.
yeah.
That was rough. Whew.
Um
Talk about some pastoral nymphs.
okay,
That
so yeah, let's get the script says they're talking about the dinosaurs or demons. There's a really harsh scene, like a dinosaur fight that a lot of points in this movie I'm like, this isn't for kids. Like why would you put this giant dinosaur battle where it dies in a, dramatic way other than to traumatize?
to show the reality,
Oh yeah.
quote unquote, the brutality
So
of our life.
the programmer tells the child that the dinosaurs died because the Lord doesn't like them. And
Ooh,
they say that T-Rex is supposed to be Leviathan. And then
stretch.
yeah, at the end, um, there's an eclipse. So there's the solar rise set imagery, which is alchemical, right? And then there's a little not intermission, but a part where they play with their instruments. Did you notice that, Mr. Soundtrack?
Yeah, there's maybe you could say I'm just playing around having fun here, but you could say that the end with the crest with the moon sort of symbolizes to the beginning of human, let's say the humans may come next and their first, that kind of whole like, dude, we always worship Gaia first, like human beings were first, like goddess worshiping shamans that ate mushrooms all the time, man. Like that's really the birth of humanity. Like,
It's
yeah,
the dawning of a new era.
like I said, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
reaching. They didn't end it on a bright, brilliant sun.
No, all the dinosaurs died. And then we have an eclipse and the dawn of a new aeon. And then you have your little, what's that called? Intermissions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're talking about cymatics, kind of. Did you
Oh
notice?
yeah. Yeah, soundtrack when he comes out.
Yeah.
They personify the line.
Mm-hmm.
See how like animation is? It's like taking something as simple as a line. And I mean, I'm kind of harkening back to our last couple of conversations, but the way that the sort of animism that's happened ever since the 20th century to such bold points of even making something like a silly little line become an animate character
Mm-hmm.
and get to an elemental things as stupid as a category like fire will
Right.
become now a base for character. Anyways, go on. Sorry.
Well,
Yeah, we have a
the
thematic
script,
scene with all the instruments.
huh?
Oh, I was just saying the next scene is like cymatics, all the instruments doing their different
Yeah,
displays.
exactly. And what was I gonna say about that? Cymatic soundtrack. Oh, when he first comes out, it's like a crackle, like a electric static crackle. And this script is saying that that's like goes along with electric charges that they might give somebody being programmed, like
Like while
electroshock therapy is what
while
goes.
they're watching
Yeah,
Fantasia.
yeah. There's a fly in here. Go away, fly. So, and then what do we have? Oh, Beethoven's Pastoral Sympathy. So that's what you're talking about, the
I was joking about
nymphs on
with
Olympus, right?
yeah, let's get to the from all that dark dinosaur death to that light,
Yeah.
Bacchanal and Dionysus party
So,
time.
my gosh. So there's the whole evolutionary story of the dinosaurs and the single cell organisms that became people somehow. And then we're going to Mount Olympus of Greece and the gods and the pagan pantheon.
What a wild juxtaposition. Like, what are you supposed to believe when you're like a 5-year-old kid? That we come from amoeba chicken dinosaurs, or that do we come from these little Greek nymph Pegasus
Yeah,
characters?
right?
How are you supposed to put a narrative together?
Yeah. We always make jokes like when we go to the science museum, everything in there is a lie because it's all dinosaurs and evolution and climate change. It's like
I
this is
know.
a museum of lies. But okay, so we got Beethoven doing so the unicorns come out. He talks about the unicorns in some of his other programming
Uh,
chapters. Uh-huh.
I was just gonna say this is another one. I didn't put much. I just said paganism. Enough said on this one, but I got some notes. But the blue, just saying, we have a motif in this one already because the blue centaurs later are lured by music towards
Mm-hmm.
loving each other. And so saying it seems between this and Witch Mountain, and
Mm-hmm.
beginning with the conductor, we kind of got a little thread going this chat so far with like music, magic, and manipulating forces, and kind of
And
something. Yeah, good.
trance states,
Yeah, and
right?
Mickey in a trance state.
Mm-hmm. So the music
Yeah.
is what puts them in the trance state. So you have little Pan and like Pan and little Pans, all these little satyrs running around playing their pan pipes. And I've got a show coming out for you guys on Rockfin probably this week. If you didn't see my tweet, this is kind of on a tangent, but I want to like give you a preview of what I'm talking about because Pan is really important to the occult and Thelema in particular. So Twitter is now X, right?
Yeah.
And I knew somehow they were gonna like sneak in the what in the occult they call the mark of the beast, which is a circle with an X. And in one of the most evil books I have in my library, it like fleshes this whole thing out about why Pan is the hidden god of the 20th century and Thelema.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that like I think in the, let's say, quote unquote Jungian circles, or like everybody doing symbolism, all the symbolists out there, that frankly aren't really or doing it inside the Christian frame. That's the whole thing, is like Mercurius or the dark side of God, or like the sort of, yeah, the hidden God, or sort of this whole idea that God needs either a wife, or God is too light and moral, and so he needs kind of a cool Batman anti-hero.
Mm-hmm. He
So
needs a shadow side.
exactly. That's why I brought up Batman earlier with Fantasia. Is like he's the shadow god, the Superman, if you want to say it in sort of nerd god terms. And
Mm-hmm.
then God may need a wife, or he may need a shadow, or he may need even an animal helper to fill in his lower part, or some sort of sexuality thing. Like, yeah, the whole thing is about God being this like mercurial, dark, yeah, Pan. All I'm trying to say is people they're gonna jump into this willy nilly because here's what it looks like. Oh, it's like Taoism. It's cool. It's like yin yang. Actually, it's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's really okay that Jesus's brother is the devil, which like isn't true, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how dumb this
Dark
philosophy
and
sort
light,
of
man. You gotta have one to have the other, man.
exactly like
Yeah.
that's sort of the Manichaean stuff we'll talk about in our next, we do our other spirit world chat. But
Okay.
like, yeah, that's that whole dark light, bro. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, so tiring. It's just all over the place, people. It's so
So Pan is a very powerful demon. Um, and maybe if you're brave enough, we can do Peter Pan.
I was just thinking about that. I was thinking in my notes some time ago. It was a little bit of a stretch, but I think there's something there. I was thinking between the difference between Jungle Book and Peter Pan. They're both about sort of like growing up, but Mowgli does and Peter Pan doesn't. And so I wonder
Mm.
just what you could sort of explore in that.
Well, I've got a lot of old notes on old Peter Pan because I think the first working title of that book was called The Boy Who Hated Mothers.
Ooh,
And
yeah, we should do Peter Pan seriously because
yeah.
there's a whole I would have to like the old cowboy in movies who has to go back and do that thing he doesn't do anymore. Like I'd have to go back and brush up my Jungian books, but there's this
Yeah.
one on the Puer Eternus, the eternal child, and all about how the Puer, the eternal boy, Peter Pan, is like caught in this conflict with the mother. It's like
Hmm.
it's good stuff. It really is.
Hmm.
And stuff like Apollosius, in the Golden Ass, Lucius and the Golden Ass,
Hmm.
um, ancient tale, but same kind of deal with man's like divine eternal boyness and the Dark Mother, which is
Mm.
like Disney galore. Even Little Mermaid, with the soul of Ariel being in the clutches of Ursula, the Dark Mother. It's like this whole yeah innocence and mom stuff. Like, yeah.
Well, in my notes, Peter Pan was a bad guy. Okay, let's save it for next time because I got
Okay, okay,
a lot
okay,
to say
okay.
about
Yeah,
Peter Pan.
yeah, we
We'll
got we
go.
got more to do on our show tonight.
Did you notice how many creature derrieres are in this vignette?
Okay, my note was like I just put there's no way any 5-year-old boy isn't gonna like what he sees with the full on topless unicorns. Top half, anyways. And these days, probably bottom half. You never know. But like, I was just like, man, I was like looking at this. I was like, is anybody watching this? This is
Yeah,
completely.
right?
I was like, this is softcore pornography right here. And then
It was,
they turn into beasts. I was like, oh, they're animals. I was like,
and
go figure.
the little what are those called? Cherubs and their little
Yeah,
butts and the horsey big
it
juicy
ends on a butt.
horse.
It ends on a butt scene with a little butt booty turning into a heart.
It does. Okay, so you this is very sexual. This
And their sexy lightning scene, oh God, remember? They're on the where he's on the cloud, and I think it's Hephaestus or Zeus, whoever. He's like fashioning his lightning bolt, and he's like doing all the gestures. It was pretty. I was like, okay,
I
that's
know. So okay, it opens up with like you said the centaur ladies are showering in the waterfalls and they're getting ready to mate, right? The whole thing is a mating ritual between the centaurs and you've got the cherubs as their cupids trying to get them together. So they're doing the whole mating ritual and then you have
just
Bacchus.
like Gnome Mobile. We'll get to Gnome Mobile later. We
Uh,
got our female mating ritual in that one too.
exactly. So here comes Dionysus, the guy with the grapes.
He's Christ brought it on his little ass, right? Being
Yeah.
trumped in parade, just like Christ coming into Jerusalem. He's on his, and see, that's another thing in the whole like just throwing it out there in like the Jungian world, like Dionysus Christ. Like that's a Gnostic total thing where like you
Mhm.
just look it up, peeps. You got Dionysus Christ. It's like this whole like, dude, it's a thing. There's a yin yang there, I swear.
Mhm.
Sorry, I just don't care. I just look at stuff so silly now. I can't really care to like, yeah, just mention it and then make fun of it. I guess
Well,
I'm
a
being
lot of people are going to do stuff like that. Like, oh, Jesus just takes from Zoroaster and Dionysus and Anunnaki and all these other things. And like,
right,
no,
right,
that's
right.
not true.
Yeah, I think there's this temptation in me to like explain everything all at once, but for our purposes on the Disney Channel, all people need to know is that there's some crazy reference to these like stupid occult cosmologies in these films that like just aren't orthodox, and
Well,
like
not only that,
it,
but Mystery schools. So a lot of ancient mystery schools were based on Dionysus, Bacchus, and these were the sexual cults. And
Yeah, and
and because of fecundity and fertility,
well,
um,
this one ends with such an interesting way that the whole Greek idea that the heavenly Greek gods are sort of these like patriarchy bro kind of deal, and that it'll be this sort of it's out to get Mother Nature and Dionysus and his little nymphs and all the like sort of chthonic god Gaia side of divinity. So
mhm,
basically saying in the end of the day, we're rooting for Dionysus and Mother Nature to win, you know?
mhm,
And I don't know. I'm just saying there's this heavy feminization that comes with a lot of these mythologies, and what not talking about so much this episode, but kind of how I think a lot of electric life itself feminizes us in
hmm.
many ways. That like
Electric. Oh, like living in
living
electricity.
in the electric world, yeah,
Uh-huh.
like is very feminizing in many ways. That
Because it makes things easier.
yeah, like yeah, but in a way too that like yeah, basically, just in a very simple way, it makes things easier. Like
Mm,
now to go hunt, you don't need to actually go out and do that. Hunting is now just laying on your chair and like looking up the right stuff on your phone,
hmm
hunting online kind of deal.
hmm
And that there's just this sense that that creates sort of laziness and give it to me and I, come bring it to me. And so maybe feminine could be seen as like a wrong way of saying it, but in a way that a guy typically grew up to be a masculine boy has grown up. Basically, the idea of the simp, and the incel, it's become a whole sort of like archetype in and of itself by the time we hit this digital 21st century world that man has become that sort of South Park gamer dude,
hmm
and so I'm not so
Genuinely.
clearly I'm just doing pattern recognition, like
Yeah.
just we can flesh it out later or not. I wasn't really prepared to go into a thing about
Okay.
feminine electricity, but
Well, I'm just thinking how weird it is to go from evolution and the age of the dinosaurs to the Greek era with the mystery schools and worshiping of the pagan gods and little pans, and you're actually going to a bacchanal in the cartoon.
and then in real life, these people will tell you none of this stuff's real on the same breath,
Yeah,
the 1930s in America made by these men,
yeah. And then they all go over the rainbow, which
Yeah, that was an interesting one, huh?
in this programming script, it says before you go over the rainbow, you have to put all of your memories in the bubble. You can't take anything over the rainbow into Fantasyland.
Wow. Just like when you walk into Disneyland, there's like some plaque that says more or less something like that. You leave
Mm-hmm.
all your fear and enter into the world of fantasy and
And Wizard of Oz is a huge Monarch programming script also. I don't know if there's one of these for Wizard of Oz. There should be, but it's not published anywhere. But I know
so how
going to, huh?
what would like a scene look like, let's say, in the life of the programmer if they were going to sit down? This would be like if a kid was watching Fantasia and you had like you're a secret spy raising a kid, make them think they're your kid and you're just a spy, and or like how would they have kidnapped these kids and they're like sit down here and watch Fantasia and
Um,
we're gonna whisper this in your ear. Like how does
no,
this stuff
as
out?
far as
Where's
I understand, it's a generational thing. So your nannies or your parents or the family doctor or, the trusted therapist
Mhm.
would be the one doing these things.
This would be something to take place like in the quote privacy of someone's home
Yeah.
and sort of be spreading like sort of like cells all over wherever
Mm-hmm.
these people planted.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So yeah, so going over the rainbow, and then Apollo drives his chariot. Apollo is another false Christ. He is venerated by the Masons very heavily because he's
Yeah,
the
do they
head.
all wave to him at the end? They give him some gesture of veneration, I
Yeah,
recall.
yeah. So he's the
He tastes the rainbow too at the end, right? They're like drinking the
yeah,
rainbow.
yeah. He did. Um,
Yeah. The rainbow goddess, I just kind of put as sort of another weird inversion, like a lowercase AC,
mhm.
Antichristos, take on the Christian rainbow from Noah. Like there's just this sort of like I mean, I'm just kind of doing like kindergarten symbolism here. I'm not caring to go into super depth of it all, but like the whole idea of like God's too masculine, we need a feminine goddess, or like God needs a bride, let's balance him with the goddess kind of deal.
Hmm.
And then her over the rainbow. There's just a lot of pretty like pattern 101 kind of stuff with flippage, things being flipped and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Inverted.
makes
So yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's pretty much what Satanism is inversion of things. That, evil is a privation of good. Um, so then we have one. I don't have a lot of notes on this one. Uh,
The
in
other dance.
particular, the ostrich dancing one.
Yeah, I didn't have anything on that one to be honest with you.
The only thing I noticed was when the little hippo girl was laying on the couch, the sinister alligators are all wearing red robes and they're like encroaching on her in a weird, ritualistic way, like on all sides. It was very eyes wide shutty looking.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, honestly, in that one part. I just thought like, oh, some weird sort of mating mating violence ritual going on here.
No, but why were alligators wearing red robes like Satanists? That's weird. Like,
Well, you could say, Jamie, I'm being sarcastic here, just argue from a visual perspective that red and green are good complementary
oh,
colors.
that's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure.
that one I liked a lot just because it was kind of didn't have a lot of weird stuff in it and I thought the hippos were cute. Uh, Anyways, the last one is
Classic.
prey. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, as our conductor man tells us, it's the sacred versus the profane.
Exactly. So he's already using
He's doing look
magic
at my
language.
notes. Cosmic yin yang somewhere in here. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter. Oh, we got our cosmic yin yangs always. All this stuff is about this Manichaean dualism. Everything is just cosmic yin yangs.
And I noticed the one towards the beginning when the fish was dancing was doing a lot of yin yang stuff, black and white with the fish tails. Did you see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the fishies were making yin yang. But the last number, Night on Bald Mountain and Ave Maria together. So, like you said, the composer says it's a struggle between the profane and the sacred. He says, according to tradition, Bald Mountain is the gathering place of Satan and his followers. Here on Walpurgis Night, the creatures of evil gather to worship their master. Under his spell, they dance furiously until the church bells toll at dawn. So, what the heck is this about in a kid's movie?
Guys, these eyes just bulging when I heard
What?
that. What? I don't remember this part growing up.
Right?
This one of those Disney Plus editions. What's going on here?
Sacred, profane, good and evil.
I also thought it's funny that Ave Maria, he said, stands for hope in life, triumphing over despair and death. I was like, what about Mary, like whose name
Mm,
is what it's all about?
yeah.
Just saying these like funny. I mean, my sort of like if I had like one sort of like the children, the point of this people is like there's a weird spiritual, and I don't have an answer. I'm just probing into this. But what fascinates me is the way there's like spiritualism of like there's a good place and good spirits and bad spirits, but we don't really care to express that idea any further. So
Mhm.
we don't really need any type of way to understand how a god would be born, or if there's not really a higher god, but just like some impersonal blue flame that guides the world. All is good, and just saying like, guys, this is like, it's fine if your spiritual bearings are in place, but if you're just like your average dude or dudette who's like just trying to get your spiritual life going in the world and these movies inspire you, and
Mhm.
you're like, oh, I just love all the good feelings of the angels and blah blah blah. It's like you just kind of got to wonder who ultimately is the spirit you're worshiping in these sorts of worlds. Let's say where like good triumphs over evil, but frankly, just say it plain, there's no Jesus in any of this. Like
Exactly.
these movies, like Coco is a perfect example because they show like a little cross and they're all Mexican and they're like Catholic, quote unquote. But they go to a land of the dead and the whole movie takes place in like an underworld thing with not a single reference to Christ.
Mm.
Yes, obviously it's like Jason Paul. They're not gonna make like a Christ Disney movie. Just forget about it. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, dude, obviously because they know. It's like
Yeah.
It would never work because these two things are entirely different spiritual orientations towards the world, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Because it's
I'm just kind of like saying the
the
obvious.
antithesis.
My kind of point is like, yeah, this stuff is not Christian. It's just this weird Gnostic Christian stuff where it's
Yeah.
like Christian values and ideas of self-sacrifice and rebirth and, helping out the impoverished, all that, but with this weird Luciferic, do it yourself, magic will take you all the way. Just believe, love is love.
Well,
Dead end.
what is a company that like markets pretty much solely to children at that time? The last or the climax of their project is about Satan on Walpurgis night summoning demons. And so and it's really scary too. Like this the Satan with the wings is
Well, it's like the alchemy finally hits its weird apex, but instead it's like the nadir, the low point where matter and spirit have, the matter of the mountain has become the ultimate demon spirit,
mm,
Satan.
mm-hmm.
It's like total, and it's the climax point of the whole alchemical journey we've been on.
So
He's bringing up
yeah,
dark.
he's drawing the souls out of their graves. He's collecting all of the demons and all the ghoulies to come dance for him in the mountain. And there's a part where like three dancing ladies turn into animals and then demons. Did you see
I
that?
thought, yeah, that was like, I thought it interesting. I just put Fire Walk with Me,
Uh-huh.
uh, because I don't know. I don't have to make too big of a Twin Peaks reference, but the devil had the women dancing in the palm of his hands, and
Oh
there's like
yeah.
so much you could talk at the fire women, and there's just so much you could do a whole show on, like, yeah, demons and sexuality, obviously, and like the devil and virginity and whatever, however you want to go into it. It's just like
Yeah.
definitely the devil preying on the feminine, whether it be women themselves or men's souls, kind of deal.
And then there was literally like demon witch boobies.
I just wrote that. I put
Did you
naked witch ghouls on horseback in the
right?
sky. Yeah.
Floating
That's
around,
something.
nipples and all. The whole
Yeah.
thing. I was
Yeah,
like,
the whole carnival is there.
that was so crazy. And then all of a sudden, the church bells start ringing and like hurting Satan, right?
Yeah, this was good. This is my only thing. This is like, see, this is one of these tough things where if somebody wanted to like really go toe to toe on like, let's argue like Disney spirituality, dog, like Orthodox Christian versus heterodox Disney fan.
Uh-huh.
To be like, no, no, see, it's all good because all it takes is the announcement of good to scare the devil away.
Mm,
Which I could say, well, that was a positive moment because it's not even God or anybody showing up. It's just the bell, the sound. It's like this whole magic we were talking about, the music and the magic. It's finally hit this positive point, you could say, where even the sound of the good scares away evil.
mm.
But again, kind of just like this, I don't want to do 2 hour thing on like that. How that's more of like a pagan, Gnostic, Manichaean victory, bro, than like a true Christian resolution to the whole like church bells ringing, stopping Satan. It's like nobody thinks of Satan outside of Jesus and God. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's not like Satan is just some cool god in the Greek pantheon, like Apollo and Zeus and Hephaestus and Satan. It's
Mm-hmm.
like Hades is a totally different character, and so when you think of Satan, you think of Jesus, is what I'm saying. But this movie doesn't have that, so it's just kind of one of these funny, yeah, pagan Christianity, basically, like in the Disney,
Yeah. Yeah,
the
yeah.
Disney, yeah.
So what the programmer would say when Satan folds himself into the mountain, they would say, "Do you see Lucifer anywhere? No, you only see a mountain." And then when the bells start ringing, I want to say something about bells because I've been kind of like looking into this. It's pretty crazy. So obviously we have the bells at Orthodox Church, right? And
Mhm.
it's a pretty important part of the church. And there's even that Tchaikovsky movie about him fashioning the bell.
Yeah, Andrei
Right.
Rublev. Yeah, the whole
Yeah.
like last 40 minutes, half hour of the movie is all about them making the bell.
So apparently the bells have this ability to clear or cleanse the space harmonically and vibrationally, which is
Hmm. When
makes
I
sense. Mhm.
when I went to Platina, St. Herman's Monastery, where Father Seraphim Rose lies in repose, you get to kind of go to his little, his cell. And
Uh-huh.
maybe a few hundred feet before you get there, you go into this tree and there's like a bell you got to ring. That back in the day, he would have people ring it just so at first he would know people were coming when he's riding or whatever. But also, the guy told me, he took me on the tour, said to get rid of all any demons that would be
Yeah. So this is
there.
a thing. Like the bells dispel the demons. Um, and when Tiny Mustache Man took over Europe, he had this whole campaign where they removed all the church bells that they could. There's the
Mm.
pictures of just like acres and acres of taken down bells, and they like melted them down and made other things out of them. But they were removing that technology to dispel negative energy. Weird. Anyways, so the programmer would say at this time, it's time for all the good children to go to church. It's okay to go to church, go serve God. So they want altars that are quote unquote Christian or can pose as Christians in a church, or to be like, pillars of the community, or just blend in um, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, again, just pick whatever church though. It doesn't really matter. Just go to church.
Yeah.
Go to church.
Yeah.
I,
Um,
I thought that it was interesting with the final. I'm getting ahead a couple seconds, but the whole movie ends with coming out of the forest womb,
mhm.
another forest thing. It was
Yeah.
just kind of like, oh, here we are, just still in the magical forest at the end of all of this.
It was the most ambiguous church ever because it was just people in a procession, and you couldn't even tell what kind of procession. It was when they were singing Ave Maria, this is supposed to be the triumph of good over evil, right? And
Right.
the people are in the procession, but they're not going anywhere. They never arrive at a sacred
A
place.
good point.
And it just gets more abstract from there. Like you said, they go from a forest to another forest, and then it just turns blurry, and then it goes like this, and then the movie's over.
Yeah, I think there's even like some sort of almost, dare I say, almost like a yoni type shape of the forest itself.
That's what I
There's
saw too. I saw a sacred feminine kind of propaganda. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
Did you
saw it.
did you really see that too?
I did. Yeah, that's why I
Okay.
put out of the forest
That's
womb into
crazy.
the forest. Yeah.
So that's Fantasia, and now you're brainwashed and traumatized. And
And or if you're not asleep, because it was a long one too for
it
our young
was
viewers out there.
it was 2 whole hours. But I like music and animation, so it wasn't that bad, but it was a
Yeah,
hairy,
that's the part
gnarly
again.
thing. Hmm.
It's so beautiful to watch. It's such incredible animation, despite so much of the content.
Yeah, I just hate that all this stuff is being used for darkness. But okay, so let's talk about Gnome Mobile.
Let's do it.
The Gnome Mobile, the Gnome Mobile.
Mobile, hunting for gnomes in the Gnome Mobile. I've been having that song in my head for days, ever since I've had it.
I know, it's really bad. So this one's got the kids from Mary Poppins in it.
Yep.
Like this was like the next project that they had to do, I guess, after.
Which, like, I think we should totally pin this for another time. I think Mary Poppins might be the like, what's the word? Sine qua non, the high epitome of like Gnostic Disney
I
movie
and I love
activity.
it so much. That's
I know that's there's a lot going on with that one. But anyways,
yeah.
yeah, we got our kids from Poppins.
So who
Yeah,
still have their Poppins accents? Like why if they're American kids, why do they have this accent? But
yeah, I love the dad, DJ Maroney.
yeah, he
He's
couldn't
like,
have a more American name.
yeah, what was the one line? Oh man, I wrote it down. He's like, been kidnapped the gnomes. He's like,
Yeah,
anyways,
so this is a goofy one. It was based on a book by Upton Sinclair, which we were talking about. He wrote that book, The
the joke.
Jungle, about industrialism and how that kills people. So it's funny,
It's
like, yeah,
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say a lot of these authors that write super serious things also write children's books, like Roald Dahl and who's the one that wrote the Jungle Book? Rudyard Kipling.
he can even argue in a different way. He's not so sinister, let's say, or with association. But even C.S. Lewis, I mean, the guy wrote a lot of like high kind of nonfiction philosophy and then the Narnia kid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but I don't know.
So this is about like a tycoon grandpa, right? He reminds me of
Uncle Walt.
Hearst, Uncle Walt, or William Randolph Hearst, or John Muir, the famous conservationist of the
He's
Bay
definitely
Area.
a tycoon, and he's old school because the guy asks him in the elevator. He's like, we should get into electronics," and he's like, "No, no, no, we're good with lumber. Lumber's good." And then he's like, "Just do it, whatever. I'm cheeky and charming, and I'm the nice grandpa. You do what you want, you know."
Yeah.
So
So
he's set in his business ways. He comes from the old world.
he does. He's DJ Mulrooney, the like based tycoon of lumber.
Yeah. Not only is he based, I gotta say, people speaking now to the audience, No Mobile is based. So based is not even on Disney Plus. You gotta spend money to watch this one.
Yeah.
It's
And this one takes place in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Bohemian Grove area.
yeah, this one struck home because I literally live in the Redwoods. So I felt like I could just go walk to the park and maybe find some gnomes. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll find old Nobby the gnome or
Well,
Maroni.
it's funny because whenever I go there and you're like immersed in the forest, the sequoias and the redwoods, it does feel like you could run into some mythical creature in there. I mean, the way that the light comes through the trees and how the ferns grow in the perfect paths between the trees, it's like a fairy
It
perfect.
really is. And the girl in the story says the gnome boy is like, "I bet you were surprised to see me." She's like, "Actually, I wasn't, because I was
Yeah,
like gnomes."
exactly. So Grandpa's driving the kids to Seattle from San Francisco, and then they're going through the Muir Woods, the redwoods, and like you said, she meets a gnome, but he's the one that reveals himself to her.
Yeah, Jasper, the
Yeah,
self-revealing gnome.
yeah. And they have a word for humans. They call them dudines.
Dudines, yeah.
Yeah.
Is I was like I can't make an essay on this, but it's funny because in Tolkien, the Aragorn, these Rangers of the North, they're called Dunedain, and they're sort of like the
That's
humans.
where I heard that. Okay.
Yeah, and I was just like, again, I don't care to make much of it, but I was like, that's a funny that for like human, the same word is basically used. And
Yeah.
then isn't there a guy, Uncle Lucas, in Witch Mountain? His name is like do also like Durgan or Dugan. Anyways, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. He's
It's
similar,
close.
funny rhyming going on with these films.
So if you can count on Disney for anything, it will be paganism and like animism and worship
Yeah,
of nature. So this is what that movie is
spirits in
about.
nature, whether the spirits of nature, like in Pocahontas, or spirits like gnomes in
Mm-hmm.
nature,
Mm-hmm.
or leprechauns, or whatever else.
And this had a huge deforestation message in it. So that's why I said he was like the mirror. Um,
So yeah, he was. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's funny. It just hit me like yesterday morning or this morning. I was like, how much the automobile is an important symbol in the film, perhaps. Like, I mean, the whole thing's called Gnome
mm,
Mobile. And it's
hmm
kind of interesting. You basically have this character who, we'll say for the purposes of the story metaphysics, he's destroyed the forests, even though he basically seems like he's innocent and other foresters have. But let's say he sort of symbolizes man destroying the forest with his car, with his mechanical energy, the power tools, all that sort of stuff that,
hmm
like, I would say is he's sort of the Gutenberg man of the last 1500 years, the explorer, like that famous painting of the wanderer or whatever. He's like out on the ocean all alone. This
hmm
is Moroni. He's come and destroyed the forest and all the magic, and now the car that was originally the tool of all this, you could say, has now become retrieved and inverted, if you want to say it like that, and used for a new purpose of shuttling magic around and
mm,
re-enchanting the grove. Because basically, cutting ahead to the end, that's the whole purpose of the Gnomobiles. They're now taking the gnomes out to set up new gnome encampments throughout the 50,000 acres.
hmm
So same cool again, just like in Mickey, how the brooms turn against him in the end. This way, there's almost like this positive message about the automobile in this film that I can't quite put my finger on, but like it's the car itself that becomes the tool towards helping the gnomes populate.
Yeah.
And my one last thing I'd say about it, how it ties to maybe Walt Disney himself, is he was obsessed with transportation and cars. And like when you think about all the cars around Main Street and how Tomorrowland, you could be on like the People Mover and you have like the monorail and
Hmm.
Autopia and the submarines. Like the dude was all about cars. And so like when we're in this new television environment where people are more at home, because by the time the movie comes out in the 60s, it's all about TV. Walt Disney's like so into TV and beyond at this point that film isn't as important. The motor car becomes almost romanticized as like the old days. That's why he's got my old jaunting car, you know, and he's like, we're going around in
Driving
me jaunting.
along in my jaunting car.
Yeah. And like, what does he say? I'll be the handsomest one by far driving around in me.
Yeah.
Like the car originally was serving a sort of status role, and that's
Hmm.
why he's the Rolls Royce. That's why he's the CEO. That's why he's the top dog because like the car was status, but eventually just created a sort of highway where every station looks this. Every city's now the same sort of suburb thing.
Hmm.
So after 40 years even of the car in the 60s when this movie is made, it's sort of romanticized where the car will now be that thing where it's like yeah, I'm bored. I'm gonna go in my car and go on a magical adventure road trip. You know, the car has a whole new function where it changes by a certain point throughout the I would say the advent of television. But
Hmm.
anyways, I'm going off on a tangent here. Just trying to say this
Well,
film romanticizes the car to bring the gnome people together,
that's
which
his
was great.
redemption arc. That's Grandpa's redemption, using the car to, yeah, bring the gnomes together, and then um, promising them that he's not going to cut down their trees anymore.
Right, because the car is now reforestizing the world instead of deforesting it, if
Right.
that's a word. Yeah.
There was a true story, if I can recall, about Disney had some kind of park in the Redwoods called Mineral King, and he,
I think it was maybe even as far as Colorado, but it might have been California. But yeah, I know something about a park he was going to be doing.
they
No.
didn't want to build a road, but he had all the connections to get his road built to this place called Mineral King, and I think it was in the Bohemian Grove area, like this movie.
I remember that story about the roads for
Yeah.
whatever the plan was.
But anyways, okay, so the drama of the movie is there's a circus guy who kidnaps the gnomes, and the kids and the grandpa have to rescue them.
We kidnapped the gnomes.
Yeah. And there's like this really disturbing, well, it was disturbing. It was hard to watch. It was when they're trying to bust grandpa out of psyche val. Remember
Oh
that?
yeah,
Because
yeah, oh, yeah.
grandpa is talking about the gnomes, and his employees and his like, you know, businessmen are like, you're crazy and we're going to commit you. And they've got him under 5150 locked up in the psyche eval, and the kids have to bust him out, and the snoring was just hard to watch. Do you remember that?
I agree. I agree, especially when they're like both snoring to make it pass off. It took me back to this whole sort of trope where I guess just growing up in the early '90s, it was kind of like the whole take him off to the psych ward, dude. Like you don't see that one happening anymore, but it was
Yeah.
on full play here. Or maybe by the time you hit the '90s, it's already a parody, but it must have been a thing, especially maybe post Vietnam kind of deal too, with people coming back being all crazed out, and the hippies. Probably I should say more like the hippies, like take them to the psych ward, dude. They're seeing
Yeah.
gnomes in San Francisco in their redwood groves.
So what a weird thing to put in a kids movie, right?
Yeah, and not to mention seriously, like the TV psyop programming trauma of old Grandpa Nobby. So the Grandpa Gnome, remember,
Knobby.
he's all stressed out because he feels like he can't trust the dudines or whatever, and then he's like, "No, Grandpa, there's a TV channel on that's like got redwoods and the nature show about the redwoods, remember?" And he's
Hmm.
like, "Oh yeah, this isn't so bad. TV is pretty cool." And he's like starting to like finally get hip to the TV drug. And then they cut into the deforestation scene, and it's like timber. Remember, he's telling that story about earlier in the movie how the kid was too young to remember the words timber when all the
Yeah.
people came and like traumatized him.
Yeah.
So now timber is like this buzzword that then
He
he
was having
hears.
flashbacks.
Yeah, he really does. Yeah, Walter Brennan's great, man. It was yeah. I felt bad for old Grandpa Nobby.
So when they
This is sorry if I may just kind of hit home the alchemical things.
uh-huh.
The young boy freeing the old man imprisoned in the unconscious, when he's
Mm,
in the board, that's definitely one of these other like the child boy, he's like the child savior, is gonna rescue the old king. So that's a
hmm
whole thing with Arthur and the Grail, and the old king needs to be revitalized. It's like a very kind of one of these shaman kitchen soup sort of cosmic yin yang sort of
hmm
motif see all the time. The young boy saving the old man, you
Good
know.
point, because the old man was going to fade away because his environment was being encroached
See,
on.
they need the feminine. They need Sophia. They need all the women, remember? Because we're
Yeah.
jumping ahead. That's why the grandpa's fading away. Remember, he's like, because my young boy doesn't have any gnome brides for himself,
Yeah.
I'm gonna die because my legacy can't go on. So he needs the feminine soul because they're trapped, in the old king world of the old dry gnome, crusty gnomes.
It's almost like you can make a Gnostic thing out of almost every movie. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. It's like my crazy hunch is that I just want more people to confirm or deny or to weigh in. It's like I think electricity itself creates Gnostic way of looking at the world. And
uh-huh.
maybe we need to do more work to like present that all concisely, but I think there's a lot to it,
Well,
for angle of looking at causes,
I
formal causes.
I think between me and Jay, we got Barbie, like the definition of the Gnostic elements of Barbie pretty good. So,
I watched a little bit, but I wanted to see the movie before I watched it, and
oh yeah.
I've been watching all these Disney movies lately, wanting and having to go see. Yeah. Anyways.
So the climax of the movie is the kids and grandpa have to use their gnome mobile to take the two boy gnomes to meet a tribe that has girl gnomes to get the boy a gnomey wife,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
It was like an inverted Artemis hunt where all the women go hunting for the greased pig man.
Yeah, so the little gnome boy
Oh,
has to pick
boy.
out his bride, and then all of the girls compete for him, right?
Yeah,
It was weird to watch.
it really was. It was like, and again, I'm just like making the very obvious low hanging fruit, like kindergarten level symbolism here, but they're overpowered by the negative mother, the dark feminine, when he's like hanging on the tree and they're literally like overtaking him.
Uh-huh.
And so just trying to say there's this whole thing, and it comes to Peter Pan too, maybe, is that like all in our cosmic yin yang, when our cosmic yin yang isn't balanced, usually the dark side has gone in the trash, and the alchemist hero, Sophia, needs to go into the darkness underworld to save the world, right?
Uh-huh.
And that you create,
Persephone.
yes, yes, or Luke Skywalker, whoever, Persephone Skywalker, Ray Skywalker.
Yeah.
But she, the character will always need to basically, it'll be like an issue of light versus dark, but the dark will often, because it'll be like the feminine missing, will be like a super emphasis on like find the feminine, or the feminine light will be the guiding thing. But that will also have its shadow, and the shadow of the Sophia feminine is like the Ursula Sea Witch,
Mm.
evil witch. Basically, anytime there's like evil witch, nymphomaniacs, sex takeover, mother knows best type of thing. That's like the alternate shadow side of like the Sophia light bringer.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Like
I'm saying in
the
this movie,
stepmother in Snow White.
yeah. So in
Yeah.
this movie where the elf men, the gnomies, are without their feminine principle, they have to go get the feminine principle. So the feminine principle will be embodied in this, basically two ways: the overpowering feminine, like at the end during the dance ceremony or whatever, the ritual fight, and then the one lone introverted violet,
hmm
the girl. And
Oh yeah, because she is like the little hidden wisdom.
right,
Yeah, I
totally,
get that.
totally, yeah.
Okay.
There's probably some metaphor too, like how men call their cars women, like,
hmm
oh yeah, she's my beauty, my vet. You could probably make some some long-winded pattern recognition on how the gnome mobile is the feminine. And
I
see, the Gnome Mobile re-enchants the forest, so I mean, it kind of is like the mechanical dude. All right, now I'm totally right here. The Gnome Mobile is the hardware, combustible engine, mechanized, romantic knight in shining armor, soul goddess, who is now, as we enter into the digital world, because by the time this comes out in the '60s, We already have the satellite that's enclosed Earth as a man-made artifact. And now we're in the beginning of the digital era, slowly but surely. And the artists are aware of this. And so Disney's picking up on it, and he's glorifying the mechanized combustion engine as the enchantress of the forest because he really knows we're heading into cyborg
Yeah.
AI in our future world. So
Yeah.
we got so the car is really the soulmate, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just having fun with all this stuff. I'm just playing around with it,
Works for
but
me.
there's something there.
So, but really this movie is about environmentalism and humans encroaching on nature,
And
right?
re-enchanting it somehow. The
Yeah.
old man, the old king will be revitalized as the feminine gnomes have now, it's kind of because like the whole quote unquote Jungian thing is like everything is inside this cosmic yin yang, and
Hmm.
everything sort of symbolizes aspects of one thing. So you can kind of make the leap, and this is why it's bad cosmology, because you can just make a lot of endless associations of like, yeah, deforestation, it's really the old king who's DJ Maroney. It's also the new king because he revitalizes it through the young pagan gnome girl who's really the lost feminine, just like on and on and on and on and on and on. So
Yeah.
it's a typical Gnostic warrior myth that
Yeah. It's a Joseph Campbell for sure.
it's all Campbell.
Yeah.
Or I've noticed the other myth, my hot take is if it ain't the heroic hero, it's the shaman. Like I think the shaman
Oh,
programmer that's sort of more see again more feminine because he doesn't go out and conquer the worlds. He just sits in his stoic trance and
mm,
travels astrally,
mm,
so it's less physical movement through time and space,
mm.
unlike the old Luke Skywalker hero who travels through space, through all the galaxies and planets. The Ready Player One hero, Neo doesn't even leave his cocoon.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
speaking of outer space, let's talk about Witch Mountain. Escape
Let's do
to
it.
Witch Mountain, not from
Yeah,
Escape to
you're gonna,
Witch Mountain.
you're gonna miss that one if you don't pay attention.
Yeah. 1975, based on a book by Alexander Key. I didn't look up any of his other books, did you? Let's see.
No, I did not.
Um, so this is about an orphan boy and girl who have like super X-Men powers. And we
We
don't
don't.
know where they came from.
We just know there was somebody almost drowned.
So here is a list of his books. Escape to Witch Mountain, The Incredible Tide, Future Boy Conan. He is known for his portrayals of alien but human looking like people who have tremendously strong psychic psionic abilities. So this is a sci-fi for kids. Alexander Key.
I wonder by this point, does the public have awareness in the 70s of like government, like men who stare at goats, PSYOP, ESP, kinetic life of the culture? Does that become a thing? It probably begins around this time in the 70s. I mean, you have movies like this.
Yeah, New Age, ET, what else? What's that called? Aquarian conspiracy. So yeah, these things are just like bubbling up at that time. Um, so the kids have X-Men powers of telepathy and uh, what's that called when you can move things with your mind?
Telekinesis?
Yeah, they got that going on.
They
Um,
got him. And again, he's the alchemist because he plays his little harmonica. It's like, and he like moves all this stuff around and makes his crayons draw. Then
mhm,
eventually he picks up the man with the
mhm.
broom voodoo doll thing. I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah, and this one's got Donald Pleasance. Who doesn't think of Donald Pleasance when they think of Disney, right?
Right.
He's famous for his scary movies and his occult movies, right?
It was interesting how the girl Tia initiates this whole thing by saving Uncle Lucas, quote unquote, and kind of getting themselves in this whole muck to begin with, you know.
Uh-huh.
Through her, I don't know what to say about it other than I found that kind of interesting. She's like, "Go, better go save that man," and then he ends up kidnapping her.
So yeah, so that's how he gets turned on to their powers. So okay, there's another rich guy, like a rich tycoon. They don't really say what.
Aristotle Bolt.
Yes, Aristotle Bolt, and he is Donald Pleasance's boss. And so this guy has like on his staff like an astrologer and a guru and
Psychic.
a psychic. Yeah, so he's into metaphysical stuff and he's looking for the spiritual edge in business, right?
Yeah.
And
He'd
Donald
be like
Pleasance, huh?
this. He'd have been with Madame Blavatsky back in the day.
Yeah. So
He was Ian.
Donald Pleasance works for Bolt, and one day the girl saves Donald Pleasance from getting hit by a car from her psychic abilities, and he's like, "Oh, you'd be perfect working for my boss." And the name of the house is Xanthus.
Yeah, did you look this up at all or what it
Well,
means?
it kind of is like Xanadu, right?
I just thought of Xanax.
Xanax. Um, yeah, maybe like Xanadu. So that's the name of the manor. So this rich guy adopts this psychic boy and girl. And did you notice that they said that her powers were more powerful than the boys?
Yeah.
So she's
Yep.
got more.
She's proto Moana.
Yeah. And okay, so her powers are more developed. But he gets them
I
to
say
his
Rosa. Say she's proto Elsa. Sorry, make my joke
right.
better.
Um, they get into the manor and it's like a wonderland for kids, right? Anything that kids could ever want, but they're all on hidden camera 24/7. So
Yeah,
the
that was the thing that took me with this movie. Honestly, there's a lot of crazy stuff that was a little bit on the nose, weird psyop stuff. But this one, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Because remember that like motif, you don't see it anymore in the digital world, but like the bad guy boss with all his TVs,
mm-hmm,
always looking at everything that's going on all over the world. There's something about the TV environment rather than the film cinema. It's like a dude has a room full of 20 cinema screens in front of him,
right.
projecting everywhere, seeing it all around him. Nor in our cell phone world do we have 45 iPads around us that were doing it. There's something weird about that TV environment that created that sort of proto programmer of the internet world. Because on some level, the TV guy watching on the TVs is kind of like us checking all our stuff in our screen now constantly, you know, whether it's scrolling through one app or between various apps or whatever on different social media kind of deal. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I just had an interesting sort of quote unquote prophetic or even picking up on what's going on in the times then of the sort of TV programmer voyeur kind of
Well,
guy.
here exactly, and it's very like James Bond villain to have a giant wall of TVs where you surveil everything all at once, right? This panopticon. So this is what's going on to the kids while they think they're in their perfect home. They're being surveilled all the time.
Yeah, they're self-identifying shamans in need of a home.
Yeah, yeah. And she carries around this little purse with like stars on it and a map, right? So it's like a map to where they came from. And on their journey to find,
They're from Tatooine because they have the two stars, the two suns from they're really Star Wars. It's meta crossover.
well, they do make a comment like we're from a binary star system, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking Sirius maybe like Sirius A and Sirius B.
Dude, on a technical note, the whole like back half of that movie was all exposition where they're like, "What's your vision now?" "Oh, I'm remembering it's two stars." "What's your vision now?" This guy named Uncle Benet." "What's your vision now?" It was actually a boat." And then the guy's like, "Oh, if it was a boat, then it really must have been a spaceship." And it's just like doing the whole plot and just
The,
filling it. Yeah.
the
They're a little
flashbacks were kind of dumb. Like it was the same vision
yeah.
every time. Remember?
There's people drowning.
Yeah, like how many times are we going to see them bobbing up and down in the water? Like this is dumb. But so they're trying to get back to where they came from, a binary star system. So maybe Sirius, I don't know if you know about how important that is in the occult, but Sirius A and Sirius B come up a lot.
Only by name drop, is there any sort of particular like thing, whether it be like sex magic or power and money or something that's associated with Sirius or
Well, the goddess Isis,
hmm.
and Freemasons like venerate Sirius. A lot of African tribes. Uh, July 4th, I believe, is when Sirius is in conjunction with our solar system. It's a
Hmm.
pretty, I want to do that book, The Sirius Mystery, pretty soon because that keeps popping up. Anyways, the kids meet this RV guy who's like
Yeah, Jason O'Grady.
a burly, crotchety kind of character that supposedly doesn't like kids, but he ends up being the hero.
Yeah, and then in the end he was like, I hope you don't mind that I'm gonna always make a memory of you guys as my kids.
I know. It's
That's
such,
kind of weird.
what a weird character for them to,
But
glom
he's kind of
onto.
like Nick Fury. He's like the Nick Fury of spiritual shaman kids because he's like, remember at the end, he's like, I think I'm gonna go out now that I know the signs. I'm gonna go find other kids for my gnome mobile and
Yeah, his
bring them
Star
into my-
Children mobile.
Dude, he might be Grady. Oh, he might be Majoni or DJ Murray, but in
Oh
another
yeah,
multi.
he's Mulroney like young.
Yeah.
Okay, so kids have to get Winnebago Man to help drive them up the mountain, and the townspeople call it Witch Mountain because the people from there have like weird ability because they're aliens, but they associate them with witches. So they think the kids are witches, right?
Yeah, it's interesting just like hearing it called Witch Mountain, you'd have no idea that the whole movie was like a 70s kind of futury psy psychic movie. You'd think it was about witches and
Yeah,
cauldrons.
sci-fi alien kids. And it's very much like Close Encounters too,
Right
right?
around that time. I don't know the dates of Close Encounters.
Yeah.
It wasn't yet for Close Encounters. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, did you notice that the Winnebago man's brother was named Hiram?
Yeah, I was like Hiram O'Day, because isn't Hiram a Jewish name?
No, well, maybe, but it's Hiram Abiff is the master mason of the Freemasons.
Ah, I scratched it being a Jewish name. I don't know. I
He's the
don't know.
one that you play in the third degree when you're being illuminated.
Huh.
Master
And who
Mason.
is he? He's a master mason.
He was a architect on Solomon's Temple. This is the Masonic tale. And he knew the
The,
word of the master mason. What?
the Solomon's Temple.
Yeah.
So he would have been Jewish.
Yeah. Well, he was from Phoenicia or something like that.
Oh, okay, okay. I'm not gonna die on the Jewish hill. I don't know. I just thought Hiram
It
was
is
a
a
Jewish.
Jewish name. Yeah. So, yeah, it comes from Mesopotamia.
I just thought it was funny because it was like that plus O'Grady or whatever. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
he's just
right. Hiram O'Day was,
he's just oh yeah, O'Day. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Just multinational, whatever.
So there's these three apprentice masons that want Hiram to give them the secret word of the master mason. And he says, no, you're not ready. And so they kill him. And then he is resurrected by the grip of the lion's paw. And so that this is the Hiram Abiff story that you're
Mm.
resurrected.
And then you role play this in your Masonic
Mm-hmm.
initiation.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, um, this movie had the most boring chase scenes of all time. Like, if you could make a chase scene low impact and slow, it was really bad. Did you notice
This
that?
was I did. This was even Gnome Mobiles was a hotter take.
Yes, even No
Um
Mobile was better. And then it was so cheesy, like the camper flew like ET,
yeah.
right? Which came first, ET or this?
This I'm pretty sure this did.
Oh
I don't
man.
I don't was Jaws out? Was Jaws 77? No, 75. I don't know because this was 75, so it was pretty early.
Okay, I'm gonna look up ET and see when that came out.
I thought it was pretty good that the planet of the aliens was destroyed and they had to begin a whole business of spaceship creation, and that's why their like planet was going under, is because they had to all begin like outsourcing spaceships for export.
Oh
And
yeah,
mention their whole backstory of like why they don't live there anymore.
that always happens.
I just kind of thought it was kind of like this funny analogy of like iPhone takeover, electric
Mm.
space taking over our physical space. Got to
So
outsource it.
ET is 1982, so this is like 7 years before that.
Way ahead of the
It
game.
is.
So ahead of Star Wars. They're making these things fly through the sky.
Yep. And they fly the camper like ET and they make it to the alien rendezvous point on Witch Mountain where the little kids meet their alien dad or alien relative.
Who apparently swam on a shark or lived on a shark to make it because he should have drowned, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like if you learn how to
Mind
talk to
controlled the
sharks.
shark to help him. He
Yeah.
telepathically got the shark to help him.
Yeah, I didn't really talk about the little girl telepathically talking to all the animals throughout the movie.
Right? And the bear.
Yeah, and the dog, she's like, "Good dogs, go get the bad guys. Good Thunder." What was the horse? The horse's name
Yeah.
was like Thunderhead. Yeah, Thunderhead. That's not nice, Thunderhead. Be a good boy.
Did you notice at the very end when they got on the flying saucer, it went up in the air and down behind the mountain, and then it came back and went into the lake.
I didn't notice that. Oh, I didn't notice it go into the lake. I just saw it like went down below the
It went below the
water.
water. And so I'm thinking, is this kind of like Stargate stuff? Because they always say that they travel through water. I don't know. I just
I
thought that
don't
was
know.
interesting.
I'm just thinking as you're saying, I'm just waiting, seeing what's popping up. Is honestly, maybe on a Star Wars kick with these kids and their binary star, but they're gonna go on that UFO down into the water and go meet Jar Jar Binks down.
Exactly. They're
There's
going to
been,
the Gungans temple.
yeah, which mountain is an inverted underwater mountain shaman headquarters? We're gonna go hang out with the Gungans.
Yes.
It's like Mount Shadow.
And so this is kind of crazy that we got Bald Mountain where Satan lives in
We got which?
Fantasia, and now Witch Mountain where the aliens live.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
pretty crazy.
All times reserved for the big guy, quote unquote, and then the other one to get their little doofy witch mountain, lesser deities.
Yeah. So what do you give Witch Mountain? Would you watch the
The next ones, I
sequel?
was tempted to just throw on that. I wanted to be sure you weren't talking about the Rock remake, so I almost started watching that one first, but
Uh-huh.
I'm joking.
That was called Race to Witch Mountain.
Hmm.
So a little different.
I think they'd probably be pretty bad moving forward. It spawned some sequels, but I just don't see how they could be that much better than this one.
Yeah. Oh, I just got that The Rock is supposed to be like the Winnebago Man, but only
Yeah,
a taxi driver now. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I've never seen that one.
I haven't either.
I
All
think I
right,
saw this young kid, but
let's do our last one. Elemental.
all right, we're topical.
Yay.
We saw the flop of the flops. Apparently, no one likes this
The
movie.
obscure, weird, vaulted Disney forgotten movies. Now we're doing Elemental, which is in the theater right now, 2023. And if anybody has ever picked up a book on magic or witchcraft, what is the first thing you're going to learn about? Do you know?
Can I take a guess here, Jamie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe the elements, perhaps?
Maybe. Yes, the elements. So, this is very important to ritual magic and witchcraft and the whole occult in general because a lot of it is focused on learning how to control the elements. You got earth, air, fire, and water. These correspond to the different suits of the tarot deck. An elemental can also be a mythical being from
Mm.
Renaissance magic. So, you've got gnomes, which is an elemental. You've got undines, which are like mermaids, like Little Mermaid. You've got sylphs and salamanders, and these correspond to the four elements too. When Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard did their famous ritual in the desert called the Babylon working, you've heard of that, right? It was for
Yeah.
the purpose of summoning an elemental who was a woman to be a conduit for the goddess Babylon.
Sounds like some Sophia stuff. I
Right?
rolled my eyes for those listening. Yeah.
So when I
All
saw
that
Elemental
place.
Disney, I was like, we have to do this, right?
Yeah.
And I sent you to the theater.
And like, yeah, yes, you did. It's super low hanging fruit, but it's also like very much the whole identity category world these days. This movie is just like so all up in that too. That was
Yes.
like obvious stuff that like other people can comment on that. Don't have all too much to say because it's so blatantly obvious. Like, especially when she steps on crystals and she illuminates everything, and then dude like reflects rainbow through him, his beautiful fat water body. But
Yes.
anyways, we don't need to go to all that. Let's talk about the esoteric dimensions of elemental.
Okay, so the story is about this family of fire, the fire elementals, and they're like immigrants on what's that island? Ellis
San
Island in New
Francisco.
York,
Oh, no, I was
right?
joking. The movie takes place like basically in San Francisco.
Yeah, or
So like,
New York City, or like a melting pot type of place where you have Chinatown and what all the different
well,
cultures.
I guess for my one frame of looking at this, I saw this movie as basically like two prong, like from the Disney religion inside our little Disney religion bubble. It's like Disney is so looking for identity in
Hmm.
the post world that like basically we don't have person as the center anymore with Walt. We now have like an ideas that become the center of everything. So this whole movie is based off ideas that like what I'm trying to say is there's a search for identity both in Western man, particularly looking for God and all this kind of stuff. But basically, the specialist that we've created in Western culture, who's the expert on whatever topic he was educated in, he sees the whole world in categories. And what I'm trying to say is like that I'm not qualifying very well for the sake of time. Is like the electric world has pushed out the old Gutenberg man of categories, taxonomic man who labels everything in nature. That whole category is now being retrieved as content inside the new world we're living in. That's why people, it's just like their obsession with body and nation and who they are and their identity. These things are really unimportant at light speed in the world we're living in, frankly. And so, like, when things become obsolete, they become content in a new environment. So, I'm trying to say is this whole world where we've basically gone to transhuman, screw human beings. I'm being a little dark there, but like the human is no longer necessary in our Android world. The category of human, the category of person, the category of fire, water, immigrant, whatever. It's like I'm trying to say is that there's like this idea to try to find personage inside these super abstract definitions and categories that fundamentally don't have life in them. So that's why this
Mm-hmm.
is so dead on some level,
Hmm.
because basically without a search for identity, there's going to be well, without an identity, there'll be a search for one. And so, like in the same way the Disney World has lost its captain and is searching for its identity over the last like 50 years and just makes crazy movies now.
Hmm.
So too is Western man looking for identity. And that's my last way I'll get out of this rabbit hole is like violence is the search for identity. When people went out to the West and they're looking for who they are, and you're a nobody out in the Wild West, we all know about like the violence romanticized in the West, as you're coming onto my place and my territory kind of deal. In the same way, fire, all she is aggro and upset and violent
Mm.
because for the character, because she doesn't know her identity. And in a way to sort of get myself out of this too is like in the kind of tribal family, you could say that's the immigrant in the sort of American world, or even the medieval European. It was all about the tribal group environment rather than the specialist who's like, because let's say you grow up on a farm world, but you have a book and you can read all about engineering. It's like, well, screw you, farm people. I'm going to go do this. Like the book made the high specialized individual, and so much of this movie is about her going into her specialized glass blowing book reading, so to speak, personality and leaving her tribal world and the conflict between sort of like being, a baker 14 generations versus being your own self-made enlightenment man who's going to read
Mhm.
all the books and change the world sort of deal. So,
So her the diaspora of her fire people is what kind of feeds her temper. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, well, I'm saying too that like the whole idea of I'm kind of making a meta reach of saying that like she is just a category.
Mm-hmm.
Fire, water, earth, air, whatever. These people have no real personage. Like
Okay.
you're not just Jamie the woman, you're not just Jamie the Christian. Like you're Jamie plus so much more, It's like we can't define real human beings as categories. But it's like our world is so beyond real respect and value for the human being that we've created this whole like category world of element,
Mm.
fire, water. And these are just basic abstract categories that you can attach anything to.
Mm-hmm.
In a world of categories, you're searching for real identity. It's like, am I a this? Am I a that? Check yes one, check two. I don't fit on the checklist because I'm different
Mm-hmm.
you know, something special in me. And so I'm trying to say is this movie that this huge theme of like kind of like when category becomes the archetypal ground, there's no real life because there's no person as the ground.
Mm.
It's hard. Like why this movie had no villain is
Mm-hmm.
because there's no real characters, there's no real conflict. Because like in an orchestra, there's no conflict between an oboe and a clarinet. They're just different categories.
Mm-hmm.
So if the whole emphasis is on categories, whatever your ideology may be, ideologies don't really create counter villains and heroes like they do in typical myths.
Mm.
I'm using way too many words to say this movie's a bunch of propaganda about like categories creating personhood, which just further create further falling into categories. Like so everything about this movie is stereotyped, right? It's like
Yeah.
we're in an ethnic village, we're not really sure if it's Indian or Chinese
It was
or Thai.
very multi-ethnic. Like you're like, are they talking about black people or Jewish people or Asian
Right.
people? Like,
Right. And so
which
again, it's
one?
like it's a disservice to everybody because it's
Yeah.
just like categorizing of sort of like, well, what's sort of symbolic of rough in the immigrant world that's like injustice upon and let's just go
Well,
from there.
clearly they had some kind of thing happen to them, like what happened to the Jews in World War II, because when they talk about where they came from, there was a crisis that they had to escape from. There was an attack that destroyed a lot of their fire
Mm.
home. And that's why they had to immigrate to America. And they brought their fire worship with them.
Yeah, I put with this, the only point of that is that basically everybody had a blue flame back in the day.
Uh-huh.
That's in their homeland. It's sort of their impersonal Taoist deity, force thing, whatever you want to call it. Not a deity because it's not a person. And basically, I saw again, there's this sort of like weird specialism privilege in there where it's like, well, only we, the special ones who made it through the big danger, now have their flame left. And we're
Mm-hmm.
like the chosen select elite who are here to now keep this fire alive as we go to new worlds to conquer them, with our
Mm-hmm.
love match, as we'll find later in this movie. But
Did
yeah,
you know that fire worship was a big part of the Bavarian Illuminati?
I did not.
And then it goes back to obviously Prometheus and Lucifer and the worship of the blue flame. Did you want to say anything else about that?
No, I mean, no, not really. I mean, just kind of when you're saying Lucifer, my whole kind of big take is that, like, again, all these movies in our electric world, like electricity retrieves the ether
Mm-hmm.
and vitalism, and the whole idea of like the Luciferic Prometheus character is kind of like the mythic figure par excellence of the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that's even changing now as we move into a more different kind of world. But saying here too, again, though, no, we have our Promethean sort of themes again of the fire bearer. So
Mm-hmm.
on the nose
So
kind of really.
she falls in love with water, which is another what's it called? Synthesis, no, something of opposites. What? It's late right now. What is it called?
Synergy?
The synthesis of opposites.
Oh, like well, like the fancy $250 Latin words, like the coincident oppositorium or something.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah. So he's emotional and she
yeah,
is,
he gets whatever he wants through crying.
yeah, and she's like the temper. And there's blatant, like, we're gonna get in trouble, but you guys gotta recognize the propaganda of race mixing that's going on right now. I'm not saying you can't date someone who's not your race, but it's being pushed very heavily.
Oh yeah, it's like not a single thing these days doesn't have an interrelated family, you know.
Yeah. And this is all by design and like kind of what
Well,
you're
this is what
talking about.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say is the ridiculousness of this. It's hard to explain. I probably said way too many wrong words, but these aren't even people. So we're now moving this whole like forced propaganda stuff onto things that aren't even real, like a
Yeah.
category, fire. Like, this should just be musical instruments and be like, oh, clarinet loves the tuba and they could never really love each other, but they must in this new world. It's kind of like, give me a break, dude. Like, we're not even doing this with people anymore. It's
Hmm.
like they won't even play it. They won't even play it heavy-handed. Just like play all the cards already, you know? Quit
Well, this
masking them. This.
this has been like kind of a topic that a lot of the younger pundits are talking about, like, is race mixing okay or whatever, is it ideal? And from what I have learned in the church and like been told, mixed marriages are blessed, yes. If you have the same, it's more important to have the same ideals than to be the same color, right? And I'm romantic. I believe in love. I think it overcomes all kinds of differences, but you do have to recognize that you're going to have different obstacles to face if you're different
Well,
races.
right. Frankly, to be really simple is, I know not probably not everybody listening is Christian, but we as Orthodox Christians, it's really simple. It's like Christ is the top of the hierarchy in the church and all that. And again, you don't have to be married to an Orthodox if you're Orthodox, but it's ideal. And from there, your other identities become secondary to your identity in Christ.
Right.
You know.
Um, so yes, it's fine if you're in love and your ideals match up. And honestly, the Orthodox Church is probably the most eclectic place that I can think of that I go to, right? Like
Yeah, probably on the day to day, to be frank about it. Yeah,
it's
I
got
would I would
the
agree.
most wide range of cultures in it. Um,
Yeah,
but there is a
about it's just the way it preserves, multiplicity and unity in the church.
yeah.
You just see in places where, like in the Disneyland world, kind of the whole thing is there's that Luciferic parody AC world going on in Disney Star Wars liturgy, where everybody has their sort of like Disney is unified under the Mickey Mouse symbol, and then all the multiplicities of different companies and different sort of Disney fandoms there are, but it's all a faux
Mhm.
religiosity. It's not the same as Jesus Christ. Let's be real, people.
Right.
Like, anyways, I'm getting soapboxy here.
Well, I was just gonna say that there is a targeted propaganda to homogenize the entire world to have bring in the new world order, right? And to eradicate a lot of different races through mixing. So I'm not a racial purist, but it is being pushed on you as the thing to do
Well,
for
that's
a
one of
reason.
and that's one of the things I'm saying is very rear view mirror of our world, where as we're really all being homogenized by our phones, because it's not like really rich celebrities get better apps than other people. Everybody's on the same meta. Everybody's on the same X, let's say. Back in the day, a real celebrity, like their clothes wouldn't even be made at the same tailor shop as somebody else's. They'd have private, everybody doing their things. Now in the digital world, where we're all become homogenized by our software, basically, we are focusing in the rearview mirror on skin and body and all these things that in the way we use and participate with our phones, these things aren't nearly as important as the sort of discarnate, I don't know, information, whatever you want to call it, we're constantly at during the
Mhm.
day. So saying it's like the homogenization, being obsessed with race homogenization is almost a red herring, backwards way of looking at the real thing that's going on is the sort of AI phone takeover of our human
Mm.
world,
Hmm.
you know? Yeah, I see it as a lot of red herring. Like basically anything the content is focusing on is always one phase behind what's actually going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so they went through the Fire family went through all the things that your typical like they were discriminated against, like civil rights. Um, when she goes to dinner at the water people's house.
Well, don't forget Fire Dad's boomer grandpa didn't respect him when he made his choice to go to America.
Hmm.
So later, the Zoomer is going to go to real boomer dad. She's going to make it better, you know?
Isn't that funny how you just um likened the four element place as America? Like it was that obvious,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
A
yeah. I didn't even
mythical
notice.
land that has nothing to do with any borders or anything. You're like, oh, that's America. So that's obviously
That's
what
why
they're
this
going for.
movie was so bad. It was such an allegory where everything is like one to one representing something.
Yeah,
Nothing was like really symbolic, if you want to say it that way.
right. Um, and they made a joke like when the water guy was eating the fire people food, he's like, it's pretty good if you water it down. Did you
Yeah,
notice that?
I
So it's like
did.
almost like your ethnicity is tolerated if you just water it down a little bit.
With my emotions, because my emotions trump.
Yeah.
Sorry, my case with water guys, it's all about kind of like, our emotions are gonna just get us through everything. And they're important to indulge in them. Especially at
Uh-huh.
the end. Remember, it's the climax where they do that nostalgia, calling back to their first date and trying to make him cry and getting them all emotional that saves him and resurrects him again,
Oh
the
yeah,
tears.
we're saved by our emotions. That's a good point.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, did you notice when she went to dinner at the water people's house? Oh, and there's also the class thing. So she's an immigrant, she's working class.
Oh, right. I didn't even
He
notice that
is
at first.
establishment, artistic, like liberal, old money.
Mm-hmm.
Waterboy is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And she goes to dinner at their house, and there's like a non-binary couple at the dinner
I
table.
thought so. It's like they
Yeah.
didn't even talk. They didn't even talk, but I was like, there's something that's like weirdly, obviously, like super prog
Yeah.
at this old.
Yeah. So they got the whole fire and water, yin and yang, zodiac thing going on.
Yeah, come on, people. We know Gnostic dualism. It's like we don't even need to beat this one over the head. It's so
Right?
obvious.
I was
Integrate the opposites.
I was
Jordan
gonna
Peterson.
ask you, what is your zodiac sign?
I'm a Scorpio.
Oh, you're water.
Yes, I'm the
Yes.
deepest of the water.
Yes.
Sorry,
Um,
sounds so hard to be comprehended. I'm so deep in the ocean. I'm like Ariel.
I'm a water too.
Oh yeah. When's yours?
Cancer.
Ah, that's why we understand. It's our deep emotions that get us through these Disney dives.
It's just the crying all the time. Um,
Right. Hey man,
so
I'm all for a good cry, really. Cry tears are healing.
yeah,
That's like the dangerous stuff about these types of movies is they like which kind of tears? They're not the tears for your own repentance,
mm,
They're like they're the tears of like, oh man, there are people crying behind me during the climax of this movie and like like sobbing heavily. I was
uh-uh.
just like, wow, I swear I made a note of it.
That's
That's how much.
crazy. I think they put something in Disney movies to make you cry. I don't know if we talked about that before, but
No, I have to research. I have to research it.
because I cried at the Hannah Montana movie, and I'm like, why am I crying when they're doing the hoedown? This is some kind of scalar weapons or something. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, so that's elemental. It's all of those things we just talked about.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say again, it's like nothing new. It's that sort of compensation. There's the guilt, self-sacrifice, narcissism, nihilism, where it's like, how can I ever repay my parents for all they've done for me? I'm filled with guilt because of all my privilege and
Yeah.
everything that's been handed to me. And there's that sort of dark implication that the only way she can really please her parents is by sacrificing her personality and what she wants and love. And I'll
Mhm.
go with her following Wade and all that kind of stuff for the sake of pleasing her parents. And so there's this sort of like, yeah, again, Sophia's trapped in Yaldi Baldi's dark general store
Yeah.
where, yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying, maybe I'm reaching, stretching here, but
That's why
I
I
think
have
that,
you, because you go to those places.
yeah. My
Yeah.
climax note, final verdict is love, dude. Leave your
Mm.
family, follow your romantic dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. This is, I guess, yeah. If we don't learn to love those we're supposed to hate, even though they could severely destroy us permanently through evaporation or extinguishing,
Yeah,
we're all doomed if we can't learn to love them. So we must unite and persevere because differences are really only skin deep and elemental.
that's very poignant. Um, I was wondering what kind of
Right?
baby they would make, like a steam baby.
Right? I mean, these are the questions like, and let's give the artist credit where it's due. I mean, there's like good art, it probably was fun to animate this, but like, man, the movie was so bad. I was just like dragging myself to get into that
Yeah.
movie theater. I'm just glad it was such a good payoff with how easy it was to dissect. That was
It was
really the
Wokester for sure.
yeah.
So I want to tell you about one last thing that I
Sure.
saw today. This comes from my mom, who is OG conspiracy
Mm.
theorist, like back in the day, first generation. She sent me this video about the House of Blues in Orlando at the Disney Springs shopping pavilion. Have you ever
Hmm.
been to Disney World in Orlando?
No, I've been to parts of Florida, but not Disney.
Okay, so it's like downtown Disney of California, but it's
Yeah.
like Disney Springs shopping, restaurants, all that.
Sure.
So this guy goes there, and the first thing he comes upon is the House of Blues. And it says the restaurant of House of Blues, it says in Blues we trust. And there's like weird voodoo guys outside, and he walks in, and there's a voodoo man on a cross. Like this whole House of Blues is completely satanic. Okay. They've got a Lucifer Express at the Crossroads mural
Dang.
with 666 and the devil holding a guitar with kids in coffins on the wall. There's paintings of like weird black animal man looking people holding white babies. It
Hmm.
looks very voodoo and demonic. They've got like Pacific Northwest totem poles. And the hostess,
That's my neighborhood. Can't
yeah.
bring that out here. Take that out of there.
I know. I was like, what does that have to do with voodoo and House of Blues?
Well, dude, it's like I don't know, shamans and dancing and like native. Therefore, it
Well, so
I
they
can't
bring in
finish.
all of these Southern Gothic like artists, like real known artists to do paintings and art installations for this House of Blues. And the hostess area has a pulpit, like a literally a pulpit that preachers preach from with the verse from Mark about casting out devils and a
Wow.
snake handler toy preacher.
So is this like an installation or a temporary thing at the House of Blues right now, or is
No,
this all?
it's the decorations of the House of Blues in Orlando.
Wow.
And they got all these artists to contribute like real Southern voodoo art and stuff.
I
And
think that this is most people don't even know what they're really getting in with all this stuff.
no, they don't. And the stage is like the flames of hell. Uh, I have a whole list of
Go
like just
for it.
this
I'm
House of Blues.
listening.
The stage of the flames of hell. There's a mock Last Supper painting. He goes up to the manager, and the manager starts telling him that when this House of Blues was built, they had a ceremonial Mississippi mud pour ritual,
What was
which
that?
is whenever a new House of Blues opens, they put mud underneath the stages from the crossroads where Robert Johnson sold his soul to the devil for blues music.
Oh, talk about it's like venerating relics,
I mean,
but dirt.
so they take mud from the crossroads where like blues and rock and roll was born by selling your soul to the devil, and they put it under the stage at the Disney House of Blues.
That's so wild.
It is
Okay,
freaking wild.
we go ahead. Go ahead.
Um, there is an arch made of faces and Egyptian images that has an all-seeing eye at the top.
Wow. What
Uh,
happened to just the old Mickey Mouse ears? Aren't these good enough for
no, you have
Disney?
to have straight up voodoo going on.
That's what I'm saying. When the king is dead, when Walt is dead, and the religion is looking for its leader, it doesn't have the vision. It doesn't have the real eye at the top of the pyramid
Yeah,
that sees what's going to be done. So instead, it just whatever fills the vacuum.
it's crazy.
Like about
Um,
Mickey going around the vortex trying to retrieve whatever's coming up from the depths, and in this case, it's dark voodoo
right.
stuff.
And there's like this dance club slash gift shop that looks like an abandoned church. It has crosses on the doors and everything. It has a voodoo vase, those like chalk drawings.
Mm-hmm.
And in the gift shop, they sell tarot cards and juju guardian dolls and all kinds of other voodoo paraphernalia.
It's pretty crazy.
I just couldn't believe that they were actually doing that like mud ritual, like taking the sacred dirt and putting it there at the House of Blues. And lots of stars play at Downtown Disney and House of Blues. Like,
Well, yeah, and just
it's
even
weirder the more you learn.
if you want to go so far as even say like I mean, hey, literally there are sound waves they would be emitting into the space. So saying even if you just want to say the vibes that that place is emanating into the whole like Disney compound.
Right?
Yeah, I guess we're sort of finding that there's some thread. It's tough being a musician, but there's some thread between music and moving people around, making things move with your will, like
Yeah.
little in the movie, and then our conductor and Mickey with his brooms.
Well, the drum beats are the different gods. So the different beats call down particular deities to possess you. But that's voodoo, and that is the end of our show. Maybe we can do something about music in the future. That would be really fun. But next time, maybe like next week or the week after, we are going to do Haunted Mansion. What was it?
Uh, we're gonna do Monsters Inc.
Monsters Inc.,
and
Frog
then
Princess,
yeah, Princess
and
and the yeah, and then
the
go
weird one
ahead.
you found,
Yeah,
The Devil and Max Devlin.
I watched this one, folks, from the '70s. I think Bill Cosby playing Satan himself.
Old wholesome Bill Cosby never got in trouble for anything.
Yeah, so I was like, before we were gonna do this show, before we were breaking up, we were just kind of talking about spirit themes and the spirit world and Disney. So I like went through my list and I just started writing down like every Disney movie. And I was looking them up and I saw this Max Devlin movie and I was like looking up. I was like, what the? Jamie's got to look into this one. Like, so yeah, I'm glad we're gonna be able to do it. I have no idea what the movie will be like, but yeah, touching what you're saying about the Voodoo House would be good. Maybe we should do Princess and the Frog. Because
Definitely.
like I was telling you, I think there's just something in this sort of Disney magic, wish upon a star, dreams come true, get into voodoo soul trouble, get yourself out of it with fairy godmother help. There's just all this good stuff in like 100 years of Disney movies. So I thought Princess and the Frog maybe a good modern sort of uh, ultimate, recapitulation of all the classic Disney soul selling movies, you could say. But maybe we
Mhm.
could pick another one or just kind of
No,
run
I
down the
like
list.
that lineup, and people can watch it along with us, so you'll be ready for next time. So
Yeah,
thank
New
you
Haunted
so
Mansion.
much.
Folks. We'll go discovering the Gnostic themes in that one.
Yep. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you again soon.
All right, Jamie. Good night.
Night.